Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Jenny. Good evening and welcome to the May 21st virtual meeting of the City of Dublin Planning and Zoning Commission. Both the state of Ohio and the City of Dublin have declared states of emergency. The Ohio legislature passed several emergency laws to address the pandemic, including the ability for public entities to have virtual meetings. We appreciate the ability to maintain our continuity of government. For the duration of the stay-at-home order, we will be holding our meetings online and live streaming those meetings on YouTube. You can access the live stream on the city's website. To submit any questions or comments during the meeting, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. These questions and comments will be relayed to the board by the meeting moderator. We want to accommodate public participation and comment to the greatest extent possible. We welcome your comments on cases. Please use a valid name and address when submitting your comments, and please refrain from making any inappropriate comments. This is not a perfect system, but we will do our best in these difficult times, and we certainly appreciate your patience. We will now, if you will join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Planning Commissioners, if you could turn your video off, you can have your audio on as we say our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's the hardest thing we do tonight. We'll be in pretty good shape. Ms. Beal, will you please call roll?
Yes. Mr. Schneier. Mr. Schneier?
Present.
Okay, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
Ms. Call?
Here.
Mr. Supelak?
Here.
Mr. Fishman?
Warren, you're muted.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. At this point in time, I'm looking for a motion for the acceptance of tonight's documents into the record.
Move to accept the documents in for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Beal, will you?
Mr. Grimes?
Present. Yes.
Ms. Call?
Yes.
Mr. Supelak?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Schneier?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board to the City Council when rezoning and platting of property is under consideration. In such cases, City Council will receive recommendations from the Commission. In other cases, the Commission has the decision-making responsibility. Anyone who intends to address the Commission on any of these administrative cases must be sworn in. The agenda order is typically determined at the beginning of the meeting by the chair. The rules and regulations of the Planning and Zoning Commission state that no new agenda items are to be introduced after 10:30 p.m. At this time, I'd like to swear in any witnesses and staff who will be speaking to the Commission today. If you could all turn your videos on and raise your hand and unmute yourself. Anyone intending to address the Commission on this case, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this Commission?
I do. Yes, I do.
Thank you, everyone. Tonight, we have one item on our consent agenda. The following case on tonight's agenda may be approved by consent if staff, the applicant, and the commissioning agree on all conditions. And that's case number 3, the amended final development plan for Tartan Ridge walkways. Staff, have we received any public comment on this item?
We did receive public comment, and I put that in your packet, and I also emailed it today. The comment was in support of this application from one of the residents in Tartan Ridge.
As this is short, Claudia, could I have you read that into the record?
Certainly. This is from Ms. Jennifer Storm. And the public comment is, as a resident of Tartan Ridge, just a few doors down from the homes in question, I fully support the use of an alternative material for private walkways. The mandated brick pavers are challenging to maintain, and I would appreciate an alternative.
Thank you, Claudia. And for the record, her address is 6757 Burnett Lane in Dublin, 43017. Any other comments on this item?
We received none other comments from staff.
Thank you. Commission, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent case, if so made.
I
Motion
move
made.
that we,
Sorry.
that's okay. I move that we affirm the motion in this, that we affirm this consent case.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fox and Mr. Fishman. Ms. Beal?
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Schneier,
Thank you, Ms. Beal. And I'll take the rest of the items in the order on the agenda. Next up, we have a tabled case for North Market, case number 19-121 MSP, the Block D Master Sign Plan. This application is a request for an amendment to an approved master sign plan to include sign provisions for the 34,000 square foot market in Block D of the Bridge Park development. The 1.77 acre site is southwest of the intersection of Riverside Drive and John Shields Parkway and is zoned Bridge Street District, Scioto River neighborhood. Ms. Martin.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. As mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of a master sign plan for Block D of the Bridge Park development. A bit of background on this project. A number of master sign plans have been approved for this development in the past, including for blocks A, B, and C. And most recently, in February of this year, the commission reviewed and approved a master sign plan for the 3 buildings in Block D, excluding the North Market. These are examples of some existing signs throughout the Bridge Park development to provide the commission with character images. On the left-hand side of your screen, you have an example of a placemaking art sign. Centrally located, there's a projecting sign, which you'll notice has a dimensional face, as well as the Cap City sign, which is integrated in an architectural manner into that canopy. Furthermore, we have examples here of canopy edge signs, as well as a wall sign. Additionally, here are some streetscape character images. This is Longshore Street. One view is looking north toward Block D, and one view is looking south. The view on the right-hand side of your screen at the intersection of Longshore and Teller Ridge Drive is the intersection immediately south of the North Market. A quick overview. There are 4 buildings in Block D. The commission obviously approved signs for 3 of those 4 buildings, and signs for the North Market and parking garage are under consideration this evening. The applicant is looking for approval of 11 signs. When you saw this application back in February, 12 signs were proposed. The applicant has made revisions to reduce the size of some signs as well as the number of certain sign types, and that is what is before you tonight. This is the elevation of Longshore Street as presented in February of 2020. You'll notice here a prominent placemaking art sign located in the upper stories of the tower in response to the commission's desire that these signs be oriented to the pedestrian realm. The applicant has revised this Longshore elevation, and this is what is before you this evening. You'll notice a greater attention to that streetscape character. So in detail, the applicant is requesting approval of 1 projecting sign. This sign is 12 square feet in size and will be a metal sign and is intended to be illuminated. Staff is conditioning that this sign have a dimensional face. which will be confirmed with building permitting. This is a new sign that's proposed on the north elevation adjacent to a public plaza. This sign is proposed to be painted on the masonry facade and is 24 square feet in size. It will be non-illuminated. Next is a revision to the wall sign above the central entry of the North Market. This is the primary entry to the market. The facade is proposed to be painted red, and a 50 square foot individually mounted metal sign will be affixed to the wall. The wall ID sign, which is a small identifier adjacent to a primary entrance, is proposed. This sign will be no larger than 12 square feet in size and will be made of individual acrylic letters, and this sign will be non-illuminated. This is the first of several placemaking art signs. This sign is significantly reduced in size from the Commission's previous review. Originally, it was about 1,200 square feet and in the upper stories of the building. As proposed today, it's 400 square feet or less. It is proposed to be a vinyl applique and is non-illuminated. It does complement the central entry and creates a memorable moment for visitors. There are two other placemaking art signs proposed at the southwest corner of the building. This is the intersection of Longshore Street and Tuller Ridge Drive. The rooster is proposed to be a hybrid metal and paint sign. It will be no greater than 40 square feet in size, and it will be illuminated from below. Additionally, the applicant is proposing 2 North Market word marks. This word mark has been reduced from 160 square feet to 120 square feet in size, and this word mark is painted on the masonry and is non-illuminated. Finally, the applicant is proposing 3 placemaking art blade signs. Previously, the Commission saw these as placemaking art banners. At the time, 6 banners were proposed in a variety of colors, equally distributed across the Longshore Street facade. The applicant has revised this design based on the Commission's feedback and has recommended a more permanent solution, which is a perforated stainless steel panel with individually mounted letters. These panels will be illuminated at night and will provide additional wayfinding given the curvature of Longshore Street. The final sign proposed is a window sign. This window sign is proposed on the south elevation facing Tuller Ridge Drive. This sign will be no greater than 30% of the window area, allowing for up to 70% transparency. The fabrication will be a vinyl applique and it will be non-illuminated. Staff has reviewed this against the master sign plan criteria in the code, as well as the Bridge Street District sign design guidelines, and is recommending approval this evening with 4 conditions. These conditions are simply to ensure that the final details associated with these signs meet the high expectations established throughout the Bridge Park development and the Bridge Street District. Be happy to answer any questions.
Commission members, does anyone want to start us off? Any questions for staff?
I do.
Mr. Grimes.
On the lighting, I don't know what the history might be of, is there a certain time at night that they get dimmed or turned off? Just thinking about through the later hours when businesses are closed, reducing the overall illumination that'll come out of the entire district. That to me seems like it might be an issue that has been discussed in the past, and I'm just trying to understand if it's an issue and if it's been dealt with.
Yeah, so I can let the applicant speak more to the operational details of the Bridge Park development. But in terms of what we've heard at the local level, We've not had complaints regarding light levels, although I think, as you alluded to, Mr. Grimes, as those businesses close at night, the light levels do decrease. The parking garages, including the building that the North Market is in, which is primarily a parking garage with a ground story tenant space, is illuminated throughout the evening for safety.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. We'll pause for the applicant comments when we get to the applicant presentation. So if we could just take note, I'll take note, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Are there any other questions for staff on this item?
I have a question. Ms. Martin, did by any chance, did staff discuss alternatives to the original banner style? Discuss different options, because in the history we had suggested some sort of a cutout or more artistic blade sign, I guess I would say.
That was not a discussion that we had with the applicant prior to this resubmittal.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any other questions from the commission?
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, Mr. Fishman.
I guess my question is that if for some terrible reason the North Market disappears, can we put a condition that the signs also disappear? Sometime that's my question, I guess. So if the North Market leaves, we've got an unusual amount of signs, and I think the signs should disappear too, and whoever the new tenants are can reapply, and so on.
Mr. Fishman, I think we would anticipate that happen. We certainly have the opportunity to add a condition to clarify that, but I believe Mr. Starr can speak to this in greater detail about how the lease obligations work, but generally speaking, these buildings and tenant spaces are required to be restored to their original condition.
But I guess my concern is that we have had in the past where we've approved a sign, the next tenant moves in and says that's already been approved and puts his signs there, and those sizes and many amount of signs aren't appropriate, but he would get them anyway. So I would just like to see a condition. I have no problem with what's going on now, but just if the Market leaves, the signs leaves, and the new tenants would have to reapply for the appropriate signage. That could
That's
be
correct.
an easy condition, right?
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Thank you, Ms. Martin. Ms. Fox, did you have one more?
Last one. I know in the history we talked about that the vinyl banner may be temporary to see how it works out, but it would eventually be hand painted, or a material that was not vinyl might be used in the future. And secondly, that a condition that they originally had agreed on, that the paint on the brick, if that was approved, that it would be removable and not needing to be sandblasted. That would, hurt the building face. Did you by any chance have that as a condition within the sign package?
So that's not a condition as part of the staff report, but I do believe the applicant is prepared to speak to the paint that's being proposed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. At this time, if we have no other comments from the commission, I'd like to invite the applicant forward. Welcome,
thank
Mr.
you.
Starr. How are you?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Ms. Martin, do you have the video queued up? So I just want to introduce this video real quick. So one thing that was apparent in the last, time we were in front of the commission was that there was a real lack of context, I think, for what we were trying to accomplish here. So because the streetscape is so important, not only to this neighborhood, but this particular location, and because of the special nature of this use. So we worked together with Reveal Visuals, who's done work for the city, to try to incorporate that streetscape into this video. So I'd just like you to play this, which gives you some good context for this sign plan.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Mr. Starr.
Thank you. I only have a few comments and then I'll address the question. So, you know, our original meeting date was February 6th, and quite a different world we live in today from that last time. We had intended to be back in front of you with 4 to 6 weeks with an updated plan, and obviously things changed. And it was clear after that meeting that the development of our ideas was not as far along as it is today. And you know, when I went back and looked at that original presentation, one thing that was readily apparent to me, and I think you see it in this presentation today, is that, and some of this sometimes is difficult in this rendering of these signs, is that we didn't accurately represent the storefront conditions that exist there today. So, and she did a very good job showing that sort of before and after. You know, we have beautiful, hefty bifold doors. We have nano walls that have a varied tile patterns underneath them. We have these beautiful wood hero doors that have these pivot hinges with these large cast bronze door pulls. And I think that's accurately represented. In fact, you could come out to the site now. They've just installed the 2 bifold doors and stand there and see them. And they're really impressive. So, you know, we wanted to showcase that not only in the documents, but in the video, just to show the quality of what we're doing. And I did review the comments in detail from our last meeting, and it was very clear that there was a desire for quality over quantity. And not only that, but is all about pedestrian, making sure that the pedestrian experience was important. We should embrace that everywhere, not just here. But also at the same time, we have to acknowledge that this is going to be a destination, and it's on the ground floor of a parking garage, and it's on the interior street. So it's a balance of these effects of getting people there and letting them know this is a different place than just the ground floor of a parking garage. So obviously there's been some substantial changes to this package. We've reduced the quantity of the banners. I don't know that I even call them banners anymore. They're very high quality signs. We reduced the size of the rooster. I'm speaking to the graphic that's at that center entrance. We utilized the red paint, which I think is very unique. And then we added a small scale, sort of pedestrian scale, painted element on the north end. And while it's not part of this package, this package is put together with the whole experience in mind. So there is garage experience. So the second floor of the garage has an elevator and a parking experience that ties with this. The interior regulatory wayfinding signage has an experience that's tied to this, and they're complementary of each other. And finally, we're working right now on an environmental graphics package to really bring this space to life. So, so all of these things together, you know, are helpful in that manner. To get to the questions, and I took a few notes here, and if I missed one, I apologize. The first one was about the lighting that Mr. Grimes asked. And while we're working through those details with the fabricator, we expect that these signs will be on a photo cell, so that way we don't have to adjust it at different times of the year. They'll come on and come off with the you know, day and night conditions. Mr. Fishman asked about would these signs go away? These signs are specific to this user. We do not have any issue making that a condition of this approval. They're obviously very specific to the market. The paint removal, certainly we would agree to use methods that would not harm the building materials. Obviously, we want them to remain in place and not be damaged. There was a question I think Ms. Fox asked about other consideration on banners and blades, and we didn't really evaluate a lot of different options there. What we wanted to do was develop a blade option that felt high quality. And if you're familiar with the vertical wayfinding blades throughout the city, those are really high quality signs. These have some of those same characteristics. Obviously, we have to deal with wind shear. They're up in the air, so we were making them perforated. And it's also just it's a little bit more artistic than just a solid panel. So that was the thought process there. I didn't have any other comments beyond that unless there are additional questions. I will point out where target date for the market to open now is August 1st, in case anyone was curious.
Ms. Fox, I thought I had one more down, partial question that you were asking about the vinyl.
That's correct. I just wondered, there was some mention the last time around that it would be possibly vinyl to start with, but then possibly hand painted after that. Is there thought about?
That's on glass. It's probably much easier to execute as vinyl. It could be painted potentially. We're looking at some painted elements on the inside, most certainly. There's more easier blank canvases to paint, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to incorporate some of those elements into the interior package.
Okay. Okay. That's my only question that I have, I guess.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Turning it over to the commission now. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Going once. All right. I'm seeing some head shakes. All right. Staff, have we received any public comment on this item?
We have not received any public comment.
Thank you, Claudia. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the commission for discussion. Jane, do you want to kick us off?
Well, one, I think that the sign package in general is really fun. I think that many of these elements do meet the criteria that we're looking for. And I really appreciate the video. In fact, I'd really kind of like to see it again because it was kind of quick. My first impression when I saw the two differences is I thought, wow, it seems like a lot at the street. But with the reveal video, it did give an activation to the street. And I think the painted area around the entrance is really nice. I'm still struggling with the blade signs. And the first concept was colorful, which is what I really liked. There were just too many of them. The second concept is a higher quality, but not as edgy and not as colorful. And so I'm really struggling with that because I think that a blade sign off the building's facade on that side of the building is really a valuable aspect because it gives dimension to the face and creates interest as you come down the street. So I'm not against the blade signs. I just don't feel like, for me, I don't feel like they're there yet. They're simply the perforated panel is definitely a higher quality than a cloth banner, but I guess I should have asked this question, is the rooster dimensional on the blade sign? Is it and it's lit from, I'm assuming, from a light that's shining from the building onto it instead of internally illuminated? It just doesn't have as much fun characteristics coming down the street, I think, that I would think an artistic blade sign would have. And that's really my only concern. I do like the rooster at the street level because I think it's kind of a fun element. So those are my thoughts.
All right, and Mr. Starr, we'll get the rest of the commission's discussion and then we'll come back to you for some additional answers. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Call. Mr. Starr, I love this application. I love this application as it stands. The blades I don't have anything negative to say about it. I think you've really incorporated a lot of the feedback that the commission gave you from our previous review, especially considering engaging pedestrians at that pedestrian level. I think you've done an excellent job there. I was not sold on the big circle rooster coming down to ground level. I was a big fan of it originally before you moved it down, but I recognize what the intent of that was when you talk about engaging at the pedestrian level. And I think the video really drilled that home for me, and I'm completely on board with this package. I especially love how you showed when you turn the corner and the rooster is on the edge of the corner building and the red is coming off of the building. I think that looks amazing. So just generally positive feedback. I don't have any concerns or pushback on this application. Thanks for taking our comments to heart from the previous round. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Anyone else have further comments? Mr. Fishman?
Yeah, I am ditto, ditto, ditto. I think that they listened to our feedback, and I think it's a commendable effort. I'm thrilled. I can't wait till August. I do want to help write that condition that I guess about if they leave, and I would hate to see them leave, but if they did, that the signs. What I really meant was. The signs would leave, but I want then the new people to come back and apply and meet code rather than, and that's what we've had in the past where the guy says, well, a Big Bear had that sign there, so we're just going to replace the face, and so that I hope maybe Claudia, you can write that condition. Other than that, I think it's great. I think you did just a marvelous job. I think it's going to be a really exciting place to be.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Schneier?
I would just say that I'm appreciative of the challenge that this location has for pedestrian traffic with a garage right in front of it and on top of it. And so it's just exciting. I think they've done a wonderful job. And I'd echo the others who said we can't wait till August 1st.
Thank you. Mr. Grimes, Mr. Supelak, any comments from Mr. Grimes? We'll go to you.
I think the changes certainly make it more quality. The reduction from the 6 to 3 signs, I think there's more than enough signage to indicate where it is. And I know it's going to be a popular destination anyway. So I think that people will definitely be able to see it and where it fits into the whole scheme of things. And I do like the pedestrian level. I think that's what people will really be looking at. And you already have somewhat of a canyon effect anyway, that big sign would probably not be as beneficial to what people will be looking at. So I think it improves the quality of the location as a destination. So I'm pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Mr. Supelak.
I'm going to echo a lot of my fellow commissioners. There's a lot of good here. We liked it the first time. We like it this time. The banners I'm actually going to go right along with Jane on the banners. I like these banners are an improvement. I thought we were sort of being playful and edgy kind of with some ideas last time, even in potentially sort of quirky objects sort of hanging off the building that could really be sort of signature pieces both for Dublin and for North Market. These are, again, these are improvement relative to the sort of canvas banners, but so I'm not going to sort of get in the way of that, but it may be a missed opportunity. I also am going to echo Miss Kennedy in that I think I actually preferred the rooster high on the building, but I know that brings with it some inherent problems, many of which the commission got to in the sort of getting onto the adjacent surfaces and what would happen if that sign came off said adjacent surfaces, i.e. the stone and brick to the side. I would also suspect, and I guess I don't know this for certain, but that was a 1,200 square foot sign at the time, and now it's a 400 square foot sign just by the nature of adjusting it to the pedestrian scale. So there is a lot of merit to that. I will also say that drawing the red sort of across that pedestrian level is really a nice touch, right? If we're saying wayfinding anything, just to have that red as a repeated element, sort of mentally tying that building together, right, is a really nice touch. So I am generally supportive. I mean, obviously there's some things we all would like to do better, but generally supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Supelak. Could I get a straw poll with the commission on the blade signs? I've heard a couple commission members not completely a fan of them as presented. So can I have Mr. Fishman blade signs, yes, no, as they are included in the sign package?
I like the new sign package. I like the quality, and okay. I think, yeah.
Mr. Grimes? Yeah. Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Fox?
Well, you've heard my comment, but I do have a question for Mr. Starr about the blade sign, and this might help me a little bit. The rooster, what is how is that applied on that sign? And is it shown from both sides? Is it illuminated? Is it an acrylic? Is it metal?
You're talking about the rooster on top of the canopy.
No. The rooster on the blade signs on the
What here, Mr. Starr?
Oh, it's a vinyl element with metal on the face, basically. So the vinyl's attached to the blade, and then it's a metal element.
So is it very dimensional?
It is, yes, absolutely. You will notice it even from ground level.
And the same with the lettering?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
let me see if I can look really quickly while you're talking here, and I'll see what the dimension
while
is.
you
I have the
look,
drawing.
maybe
Yeah.
Nikki could run that reveal video real quick one more time so we can see it while he's taking a look at that.
Additionally, Nikki or Claudia, could one of you be adding the condition about removal of the signs if the site goes vacant, or if the application changes, the occupant changes rather?
Yes, I've already added the condition and I will run the video if you give me one
Thanks.
moment.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Hey, Nicole, when you share your video, there is a switch on the bottom. Once you hit the green share, there's a switch on the bottom that says share computer sound. We didn't hear the really well.
The glitzy music.
Yep. The
I will do my best. I couldn't figure that out this time. So 1 second.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Mr. Starr, were you able to find additional information on the blade signs?
It's about 1 inch thick. So the perforation is about 1/4 of an inch, and then the graphic, the PVC graphic's about 1 inch thick. So you should be able to notice it from ground level. And it's on both sides. So the tube sort of comes through the middle of the sign. Then there's a side, right? Because you have these, words in both directions. So.
Ms. Fox, you're muted.
I'm sorry, is it illuminated from a light shining on the banner during the
I think we're going to light them from the bottom up.
Okay.
Or top down. We haven't worked through that yet with electrical, but.
Okay. And then also, I thought I saw in the reveal, is there a blade sign above it's only on the side, not where the entrance is. Let's see, I've got my.
There's a blade at the north entrance.
Okay, there's a blade there. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
the 3, on the other side, right? Correct?
3 banners you're speaking to?
Yeah, the banners, I'm calling them blades, but they're the banners.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's one there's 3. I'm just trying to remember exactly the placement of them. There's 2 of them sort of north of the pedestrian bridge that connects the buildings, and then 1 to the south.
Okay. I like the fact that you have that dimension coming off of the building. I just was hoping that it was even edgier than that. So it's not about the fact that I don't think you did a great job of adding a newer element aside from the banner. It's just that I'm like Mr. Supalak, looking for something kind of like architecturally a little different other than a rectangular sign. So other than I think the package is going to be really attractive for the area, so, and for the market. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Thank you, Ms. Fox. Is there any other discussion from the commission at this point in time?
Just one question. Somebody had mentioned about the lights, you know, they go off at dark and so on. I wouldn't be too quick about that. I would like to see you experiment with that, because I think that a certain amount of light is important 24 hours a day in that district. And so for safety and so on. And I know that there are some areas of town where you go, and if you're there at 11, 12 o'clock, it's black. And so I'd like to, I don't know what the restriction is, but that is pretty much commercial there. I mean, there are apartments and so on, but I would like to let you experiment with that as far as lighting.
Mr. Starr, did I misunderstand you? I thought when you were explaining the answer to the lighting question for the sign specifically, that they were going to be on a cell. So when the cell detected that it was dark, the lights would go on. And when the cells detected that it was light, the lights would go off. Did I misunderstand?
No, you're correct. That's been our intention. And I would say that certainly there's street lights, obviously, on poles through the neighborhood. There's lights under the canopies. There's quite a bit of ambient light from the parking garages, as you know. So I wouldn't consider it certainly unsafe through here, but I appreciate your thoughts on, can you keep it illuminated maybe beyond that? I think it's just something we need to work through.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Any other comments? All right, at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the master sign plan with 5 conditions. Nikki, could you present?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Fishman, was that you?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Beal.
Mr. Schneier?
Yeah.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Yes.
Ms. Call?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Supalak?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. We look forward to August 1st, and we're really excited. This really will be a placemaking, well, in and of itself, it is placemaking. So thank you very much for coming to the City of Dublin. All right, our next case, we have Spring Hill Suites. We will pause to make sure the applicant is entered. Spring Hill Suites is case number 20-056 MSP, located at 4475 Bridge Park Avenue. This is a master sign plan. Staff, do we have all applicants in the room?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
This application is a request for a master site plan for a 145-room hotel and 2 tenant spaces in building F1 in block F of the Bridge Park development. The 0.57 acre site is southeast of the intersection of Bridge Park Avenue and Mooney Street and is zoned Bridge Street District, Scioto River neighborhood. Ms. Martin, I will turn it over to you for our case presentation.
Wonderful. Good evening. As mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of a master sign plan for the Spring Hill Suites, as well as 2 tenant spaces located within that building in F block. The site is highlighted here in yellow. The application did include some precedent images, which I've included here for you this evening. You'll notice the majority of the signs have a white illumination and are individually mounted letters. Quick overview. As mentioned, the building is oriented along Bridge Park Avenue to the north. and Dale Drive to the east, Mooney Street to the west, and Winder Drive to the south. A total of 3 signs are proposed for Spring Hill Suites, and 1 placemaking art sign is proposed for Spring Hill Suites, as well as general regulations for the tenant spaces. In detail, the signs highlighted here, A, B, and C, are the wall-mounted signs proposed for Spring Hill Suites. The first sign is on the east elevation facing Dale Drive. This sign is approximately 70 square feet in size and mounted at a height of 72 feet to the top of the sign. This sign, similar to the other wall signs proposed, are individually mounted aluminum channel letters with white faces and white illumination. This wall sign faces Bridge Park Avenue and is located above the main entry. This sign is perhaps the most pedestrian oriented of all the signs. The sign is proposed to be 50 square feet in size, which is the maximum size permitted for wall signs within the first story. Staff is conditioning that this sign design be revised as staff does not believe that the individually mounted internally illuminated channel letters will activate the street in a manner we would expect of other major anchor tenants throughout Bridge Park. Therefore, we are recommending individually mounted pin-mounted letters with a halo illumination to enhance that. This sign is on the south elevation. This faces Winder Drive and is adjacent to a drop-off area. This sign is 26 square feet in size and is individually illuminated channel letters. Finally, there is a placemaking art sign that is proposed with this application. This placemaking art sign is unique because of its vertical orientation, as well as the manner in which it's architecturally integrated into the building protrusion. This sign is 122 square feet in size, which is about 22 square feet larger than the maximum size generally permitted for placemaking art signs. Although the commission does have the opportunity to approve something above and beyond that. Finally, this application does include general regulations for future tenants. You'll notice there are 2 tenant spaces here, each with 2 frontages. Therefore, they would be permitted at least 1 sign per each frontage and the option for a 3rd sign. For those signs, they would need to select a sign from the 4 categories identified in the sign plan. And this would follow the typical procedure where a tenant works with the landlord to identify an appropriate sign package, submits a letter of approval to the city, and the city sends the signs to a consultant for final review on design and construction. So staff has reviewed this master sign plan against the criteria in the code, as well as the Bridge Street District sign design guidelines, and is recommending approval with 2 conditions this evening. Would be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Do we have any questions from the commission for staff at this time?
When Ms. Martin put up the artistic placemaking sign image one more time.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that it's 22 square foot larger than maximum. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this is just a channel illuminated, a white channel illuminated sign, correct?
Correct.
And do you know if the lettering here is what their corporation lettering? All this lettering is the same all around, same style of lettering.
Are you talking font, Ms. Fox?
Font, that's what I mean, the font.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe that it's consistent with their brand standard.
And it's illuminated on both sides of this. Is it not only on the inside of the frame here? Is it also on the outside?
Yes, it's a two-faced sign. Each side is 122 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Schneer?
Ms. Martin, I had a question. The sign, sorry, the sign that is in the drop-off area, is that also illuminated, individual letters? And is it illuminated, are the letters illuminated, or is it backlit, or is the lighting incorporated in the letters, and is it consistent with the other illuminated letters?
So all of the signs, all 4 signs proposed are individually illuminated channel letters. Channel letters are illuminated from the inside and have a face on top of them.
Okay, it didn't appear that the rendering, it wasn't clear to me, so thank you.
Ms. Kennedy, did you have a question?
I do. Thanks for coming back to me, Ms. Call. Ms. Martin, what type of guidance do applicants get with regard to placemaking art? What, just generally, like, what's the verbiage, or what are what's the intent? Can you just give us that again as reference?
Yeah, absolutely. So master sign plans in general, even outside of placemaking art signs, are intended to be for signs that are of the utmost quality and creativity. Master sign plans are not simply to permit more signs or larger signs. Placemaking art signs are a sign type that Bridge Park has established for themselves, and they actually, with collaboration of staff, created standards that placemaking art signs would activate the public experience through creating memorable moments, really.
Mr. Boggs, do we actually have a
Thank you.
definition on placemaking art signs?
We do not. Placemaking art signs are not defined in the code. It is a sign type that Bridge Park has established for themselves and has historically used in blocks A, B, C, and D.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Yeah.
Mr. Grimes.
In the channel versus pin mount, is the pin just it's not flat against the building? You're looking to pull it away from the building a little bit. Is that what that means?
Yeah, so staff's recommendation is, yes, to pull it away from the face of the building and to use what's called halo illumination to cast a light that surrounds the pin mounted letter. So there's light and shadowing at the same time.
Thank you.
Mr. Supelak, did you have a question?
I did.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Fishman.
Yeah, is there any reason that we are allowing the vertical sign at the corner of the building to be larger than code? I mean, when you're looking at the building, I mean, that seems like that would be more of a pedestrian sign anyway, because you've got that giant sign on the end of the building that you can see for miles away. I was just wondering why we want to set that precedent.
Mr. Fishman, are you referring to the 122 square foot sign that's the placemaking art?
Yes, yes.
I think at this point, we're not allowing anything. It's just for consideration. The applicant has submitted it and is looking for approval or suggestions.
Okay.
Ms. Martin, is that
So I'll reword
truthful?
that. Okay. We were going to say,
Nicely said, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right, any other questions for staff at this time?
how about the sign over the door? Does that meet, that's bigger than code also, right?
The 50 square feet is consistent with the wall signs that have been approved for other buildings in Bridge Park. So I would say, for all intents and purposes, it meets code.
it just looks a little big to me. It looks like it's kind of wedged into that space. So,
Ms. Fox, did you have one more?
Just one more. Ms. Martin, could you just give an example in the Bridge Park area, some placemaking sign examples for instances?
Yeah, so the Urban Meyer Pint House, the silo that's located in front of that has a sign affixed to it. The silo and sign are a placemaking art sign. Additionally, a placemaking art sign was approved for Vaso, which is a perforated metal panel that incorporates a logo pattern and name. Those are the two that we have. Cap City Fine Diner also is what we call a pedestrian or a ped art sign. That is because it's much more oriented toward the street, whereas placemaking art signs are usually in the upper stories of the building.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant forward.
It's Brian McNally here. Brian's our
Yes.
architect on this building. I just
Welcome
wanted
back,
to add,
Mr. Starr.
thank you. I just wanted to add one comment, and I don't intend for this to be, anything more than factual, and that is some of the devil's in the details on how you actually measure the sign. So we're measuring the sign, and I'm speaking to the large one as code. We're measuring it as code says, which is you draw a box around the entire sign. If you look at that sign on page 15 of your package, that includes the entire width of the Spring Hill Suites all the way to the top, including the tagline. So if you were to just draw a box around the Spring Hill Suites letters in and of itself, that's only 78 square feet. So some of it is just how by code you're calculating the size of that sign. That's really true for all of them. And it has this tagline by Marriott, which is really important to them. If it was important before, it's really important now. So I just want to make that point. The other thing is that this particular sign is really the letters. The architectural component, and Russ could speak to this, or Brian, is already there. So if we choose not to put these letters or smaller letters on the building, the element is there on the building regardless. You could walk out there today. I don't think it's clad yet, but it's certainly, you can notice the projection from the building, and that was approved when the building was approved previously.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. McNally, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so I think just to speak towards the architecture of the building a little bit, early on in the design process, of this building in particular, I think we always kind of had in the back of our mind, where can we place signage on the building, and let's kind of design a spot for that signage. So we're not, left with after the building is designed to try to find somewhere to throw a signage panel onto it. So I think we really kind of looked at the development in general, the uniqueness of Bridge Park, the pedestrian activity going on, the scale of the buildings, the heights of the buildings. And I think we kind of developed the signage sizes and placements based on that, and that input and feel of the building itself early on in the development of the concept. So that's kind of where the placemaking art sign came into being, is to try to get, the vertical element of the building brought down the scale to the pedestrian level, not necessarily engaging the pedestrian level, but bringing it down towards pedestrian level. So that's kind of where that came from. And I think Matt's onto something with the size of the sign is if you take the measurement of the Spring Hill Suites logo and box in the square footage of the by Marriott, I think we came up with slightly under 100 square feet for that face of the sign itself. So yeah, the code directive of taking the sign, I think that would be how we followed that. So looking at just the signage construction in general, it is highly based on guidelines set forth by brand, by Marriott, as far as, the text placement, the font, even kind of like the proportions of the text to one another is all, brand driven. So we're trying to follow those guidelines as well. They are internally illuminated channel letters. So each letter has an aluminum frame around the letter itself. Each letter is individually mounted onto the building. Inside of that frame is a white reflective paint with internal LEDs. So you get a nice even glow from the sign itself. So they're constructed with it's a white acrylic panel on the face of the letters. So in the daytime, it's going to show up as a white color to be in contrast with the facade color. But then at night, obviously, it's going to glow white. So that's kind of the construction of the sign. And all 4 signs that we're proposing follow that same design, the same font, and the same channel letters.
So Mr. McNally, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Starr, then looking to you for feedback on staff's request that they be pin mounted signs rather than the channel letters.
Right. So that comment I think applied to the north elevation, the 50 square foot sign, and there is precedence from Marriott to allow that sign type as well. So it's not something that's out of the question. I certainly appreciate the feedback. I'm not sure how Russ or Matt feel about that, but it's certainly something that does have precedent.
Yeah, I think speaking for us, I think the pin-mounted letters are fine. That's something that you see throughout the district, and I think that it's perfectly appropriate. So we're fine with that as a stipulation moving forward. There was one other thing that I wanted to add, if I may, kind of going back to the placemaking art sign. I knew that we were going to be talking about this tonight. And it's tough because, I think it's a little bit easier, say, if it's a brew house, to do a really creative, they've actually, well, when they were actually brewing beer there, they actually kept their grain out there. They don't anymore, but in this case of the Spring Hill and a hotel, it's a little bit more difficult. So we really approached it a little bit differently. It's not designed in terms of getting funny with the fonts or getting funny with with the actual form, but rather how do we integrate it with the architecture. And I think that's something that Brian's team did really well. And if you go out there, you will see it. It is not simply a blade sign hung off the wall, but rather it's a form that envelops itself around that entire facade. And Matt's absolutely right. That form is there whether the sign is there or not. But what makes it unique is that it wasn't ever intended to be this thing that's just stuck on the building, but rather it's something that really pays attention to the architecture. And I think that we try, as we're going through all of these to kind of step back and you take a look at the elevation and you say to yourself, what feels right within this space? And sometimes we end up slightly under what the code allows, and sometimes we end up over. And obviously we have here in a couple of cases. And I think what we're trying to do at the end of the day is just make it look right. And so that's really all I wanted to add. But I think that the placemaking art sign is it's a little bit semantics, but in this case I think that we're trying to think about it in terms of architecture and not necessarily in terms of a logo.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. At this time, I'd like to invite commission members with questions to engage with the applicant. Ms. Fox?
You always go to me first, don't you, Ms. Call?
That's because you're anxious. You're on the edge of your seat.
I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm actually sitting here thinking about everything that Mr. Hunter talked about. I don't disagree with you at all about the fact that that the architecture, would really lend itself to having some signage there. I'm struggling a little bit as I looked at the reference images on page 14. The sign leaves me a little flat in its first look at. I'm not opposed to having it, and I don't have a problem with the font or the fact that you have the by Marriott, but I think if you look at the reference images, they're more interesting than that sign is. Whether it needs illuminated border, whether it needs a different, I'm not crazy about white channel letters. I think they look very generic anyway, but I understand that you have a dark building and so you want to contrast it. I feel like it's lacking some other detail to make it a little bit more unique than a typical illuminated white channel letter sign. So
now, Ms. Fox, do you feel the same with the interior? So if you're looking at page 16 of your image packet, on the left side, and for the applicant's sake, I'll point this out. So this is what we're looking at here. To me, it looks very, very different when it's on the interior of the channel, that cutout, that architectural detail, than when you're looking at the outside.
I
For me,
agree.
it's the same way, Ms. Fox. I think that interior one is somewhat lackluster,
Right.
but I really like the way the exterior one pops.
I honestly, it's maybe those reference images where there's attention of a little bit of detail or something that makes, that gives it a more striking uniqueness, just a little jewelry to it. Now, I understand it's a contemporary building and I'm not an architect, but that's just my first impression. And I also wonder whether or not it's simply the white channel letters, because it strikes me on all sides of the buildings that it just isn't a very interesting sign type. So I don't know if you thought about anything. I'm curious, did you think about anything other than white channel letters?
So like we had mentioned before, is that it's highly based on obviously the brand standards, and they have pretty strict guidelines. And I think you had alluded to the reference images that we have for the vertical sign. And I'll tell you what, it was kind of hard for us to pull some relevant reference images for that, because we're looking at something truly unique, especially for the Spring Hill Suites brand. You'll see the couple images we're able to find a vertical Spring Hill Suites signage is more like what you would call as a typical vertical blade sign, which we didn't want to do because we didn't feel it really meshed and integrated with the architecture like we're trying to do, like the Metreon sign in the middle does. I thought that was a little bit closer, as far as being integrated with an element on the building to get the verticality of it. But we certainly have a good working relationship with the design team at Marriott, and we're able to get them on board with this as a unique sign type for them. So it's really something different for them, and we kind of haven't seen it before, and they haven't seen it. So we went through a process to get them on board with it. So that's kind of to speak towards the reference images is how they look a little bit different than
Right.
what we're showing.
Now that image on the left that's up on the screen now, how it's the edges, it's illuminated in two ways. It's illuminated by the letters itself. It also has this glow. I don't know what's possible here, but it just seems as if there needs to be an additional something to give that sign a little bit more uniqueness other than just channel letters on the black face. I'm not trying to design it. I'm just kind of asking the question, is there something that is there something else maybe that could be an added that gives it a little bit more interest?
Right, and I think that if you look at the material that those letters are mounted on, being a aluminum composite panel, there is some reflectivity to that. So especially the one on the interior face of that sign, you're going to get some play with the light on there, I think. So that will brighten it up a little bit, as well as one on the outside just being mounted where it is, but especially on that inside one. So I think you'll get some extra brightness from that.
Okay. Okay, well, that was my question. I think that was my question for you on that one.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Anyone else from the Planning Commission? Questions or comments for the applicant?
I'll just make a
Mr.
comment.
Fishman?
I think your explanation was fine. I'm fine with the sign. I like it the way it is. I hardly ever disagree with Ms. Fox, but I think the sign is fine. I think you did a great design job. I was just curious before why we went larger, but I think your explanation was fine. You don't have to say any more about it. I like it.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Ms. Kennedy?
I'm in agreement with Ms. Fox on this placemaking art. I think that's why we were asking Ms. Mark questions initially. What is the intent of placemaking art? The intent is to activate the place. And this doesn't seem to meet that intent when we think about activating the place. It simply is words. When you think of signs like Basso with the grid around the word, there's something to it beyond just the word. It doesn't seem to meet the intent of placemaking art in my mind, based on the explanation that we've been given by staff. So that's my opinion on this. That's where I stand.
Mr. Supelak?
Generally, I'll say I'm supportive of the package. I actually think some of the requests by staff, i.e. the pin mounted halo lit modification on, I think it's the north face, is a nice touch. I'm going to generally say to Mr. McNally and Mr. Starr, I worry that same sign that they're doing that to right now, at least in the rendering I see, feels a little bit overscaled. I think Warren was touching on it too, that it feels like it's a little bit crowded in there. So I'm going to seed plant that with you all. Maybe there's a slight reduction once you see it. Of course, we see when I'm saying this, we see it that also in the flat elevation, the flat architectural elevation, but sometimes that's hard to totally understand, right, until you experience it. And of course, the rendering is, you only see so much to the side. So there's just something to be considered there. That commentary about a slight reduction, I actually am all in favor of the placemaking sign here. Integrating it with the architecture starts to take a kind of common, and I don't mean this as sort of unfortunate as it might sound, a common building and turn it into something different, right? It does sort of create a different sort of place. The Spring Hill Suites logo is really just their typography. It's not really a logo at all. So it is integrating it effectively, right? With a different tenant, we might be having a different conversation, but I think it's compelling and interesting. I might contend personally that it too is slightly overscaled, that I could do with a ever so slight reduction, but I defer to you all on that. I will say, I think what in part the example Jane was referring to on your example page, on your precedent page, right? There's that black vertical on the corner. That building is the most compelling on that page to me. You getting there? Thanks, Nikki. So the other part of that to keep in mind, and I think there's something to the look away from the sign. Imagine those lit panels, those lit portions on the building. Imagine those weren't lit, and suddenly this sign, this building is a little bit lackluster. So I think that's as much the combination of the light integrated to the building and the sign in that case that sort of makes that striking. And I wonder if there's opportunity relative to some of the architectural moves on this building, right? Some of the vertical moves, if there's opportunity to integrate some of that sort of laced light in an effective manner. That's all to say. I'm supportive. I think this is a nice package, including the sort of recommendations from staff right now.
Thank you, Mr. Supelak. Mr. Schneider.
Well, I have to say I have this visceral reaction to the sign that we've been speaking about, and let me go that way and then I'll come back. All I see is at first was sort of this 1940s film noir with like Humphrey Bogart in the window, and those couple of those letters are starting to flicker. But I'll step back from that and say that obviously the technology has improved, and I give the applicant credit that they should receive for the design. I'd also have to say in passing that I wonder if the people who are going to be in those rooms when those lights are on all night will have an issue with that. But none of that is within our purview, and so I'd say I am supportive, and I actually like the consistency of obviously not just the brand, but the way the letters are illuminated.
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Mr. Grimes, do you have any questions or comments for the applicant?
No particular questions. I concur with the staff conditions. I do like the fact that it is proportional with the space that it's fitting. I don't mind it going oversized by a few feet. I like Jane's comments about, if a little bit more could be due to enhance the lighting of the space. But overall, I think it's a fine package, and I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, a question for you.
Yes.
The placemaking sign, the 122 feet, the method of measurement that we use is consistent across all applications. So anyone who would fall into any sign category would be aligned with or need to be aligned with those same measuring criteria. Is that a correct statement? And then one clarification question, is that 122 square foot on each side of that sign? So for a total of 244 square feet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite the commission members for further discussion. Thank you, applicant, for answering our questions. Any call outs? I have a couple, but I'll defer to you first. I'm seeing head shaking.
I'm good.
Okay, Ms. Fox, you just unmuted. Did you have something?
Yeah, I did. I'll just say that I've already spoken about the placemaking sign. I appreciate the fact that this particular side of the building is, and it's a hotel, is not going to come up with an edgy, different sign. It's a franchise. It's an operation that's around the world, and they're going to have what they have. So I think if there's a way that you could do a little additional interest to that space, I would like that. But most importantly, I didn't mention, and I do agree, that the entrance should have a little bit more uniqueness. The entrance sign at the front of at the front door, and I do like the glow from behind. The others can all be the same channel letters, but I think that with the images they show, the reference images on page 11, it just gives a little bit more class to an entranceway if you can use the same font, but treat it in a little different manner because it's your front door. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Any other comments from the
Just one comment.
board? Ms. Mr. Fishman?
We've been talking about this sign, and as I said, you've made me comfortable with it, even though I still think it's a little big, but I'm comfortable. But we've in early development of the Bridge Street Bridge Park, we talked about ground art, and this would be a great opportunity for ground art. To somebody just mentioned that the entrance a little uninteresting. The entrance forget the signs. And maybe this would be something that looks to me like there's some space here where we could put something pretty dramatic, which would really accent the entrance. So just a suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman.
Because I think we were going to integrate ground art throughout the Bridge Park. We haven't done much of that. So this might be a great opportunity.
All right, just a couple of comments. So I struggle with the 122 square foot sign. I think, going back, I'm going to take a page out of Mr. Fishman's book here. We're always looking at precedents that we're setting. And if we're allowing a placemaking sign, and I'll tie Ms. Kennedy's comments in here for a moment, a placemaking sign that is simply a logo or the font approved by the brand to allow for additional advertising, I do significantly appreciate the effort that went in the architectural component of the additional signs, the placemaking signs, but looking at code with the number of signs allowed, and placemaking signs are an exception, and they're left to our judgment as to if they establish or if they accomplish what we were striving for with placemaking signs. And so if we're looking at a building that is using just a logo or just the name of the business, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I think it's pretty. I do think that it could be shrunk down to meet that 100 square foot and accomplish the same thing. But it's a pretty sign, but it's a logo and there's nothing more to it. And so if you look at, and Mr. Starr, you just kind of wowed us with your North Market package and the roosters and the color and the pop and the blades and the improved materials, everything. And it has wow factor. And while these are lovely signs and they're functional signs, there's not the rooster, there's not the grass on the roof, there's not the wow factor. And so to essentially go above and beyond what code allows by not just the placemaking signs themselves, but also an increase in size of the placemaking signs. I understand that measuring can be different based on how other people measure it, but across the city of Dublin, we measure it the same. So looking at that 100 square foot, not only are we looking at granting, in my mind, 2 additional, because they're completely different fronts of that architectural detail, that placemaking times 2 and an increase over the allowable size anyway. So that's just something I'd like to put out there for the commission to consider. And other than that, I think they're beautiful. I do agree with staff's pin mounted on that north side, and the other signs are, the channel, and they're beautiful signs. So I'd like to turn some time back over to commission for discussion, and then I would be looking to move forward.
I'd like to suggest the possibility that maybe that the placemaking sign comes back with a further redesign, whether it's, if we're going to something larger, then and I can see if you shrink the letters on an architectural piece that cannot be changed in size, it might not look proportionate. I'm just missing something on that sign. I feel like if it's called a placemaking sign, it just should have a bit more interest than it does. So I would like to see it come back with a little bit more consideration. Other than that, the suggestions by staff are all right with me, and the other signs are all right with me.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Any other comments, questions from, yes, Ms. Kennedy?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Jane on this, based on her last comments, or Ms. Fox. If it's going to be placemaking art, there has to be something else to it. I think Ms. Fox used the word jewelry or something to really make us want to go above and beyond and allow for something more here. So that I'm on that side with this.
Mr. Fishman, could I get your opinion, your comments?
I think it's been interesting. I heard going back and forth. I'm fine with the sign the way it is. I think Ms. Call's point's well taken, and I took the same attitude. I think that if you're going to redesign the sign, you might as well make it meet code and be 20 feet less. And I do think, if I'm looking at it, it does look a little crowded in the space. And if the board feels that it should have more pizzazz, fine. But as long as you redesign it, I think it should be within the 100 foot, so that we don't have to deal with that down the road. So.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Supalak, Mr. Schneier, Mr. Grimes, any final comments from you? I'm seeing a head shake.
I would just say that it is a different end of the development from the North Market, and it is, designed to be special hotel, and I think that has a certain reserve to it as opposed to a market where you're looking for a lot of foot traffic. I don't know if the applicant would be interested in how far do you go, or what latitude do they have in terms of the corporate logo on that? I'm fine with the way it's been proposed and the conditions of the staff, so I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. All right, turning back over to the applicant. We have a couple of options based on the commission's feedback and the discussion here this evening. We'd look to you to see if you'd like to put us to put a motion on the floor, if you would like us to table this item for some re-evaluation on your side. What would you like us to do? Mr. Hunter, it looks like you're unmuted.
Yeah, well, I just unmuted. This is strange because I can't turn to Matt and talk to him without everyone else. Great. This is the one part about this I don't like. I don't know. I wish that it said placemaking sign and not placemaking art sign, because I think that we're letting that one word kind of get in the way of I think what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that when I say placemaking, the scale of that sign is appropriate when you think about it up the hill and when you think about drawing people into the district coming across the bridge. I think that it's artistic because it's literally the only sign I can think of in Bridge Park, but certainly for the region that literally hugs the building. I think it's beautiful. I sit here now and I wish, gosh, can we just rename what it's called? But I know we can't. I know this is what we're talking about. I don't personally know when the next meeting would be, or quite honestly, what we would come back with. I think that what we've got in front of you right now is what we thought was the right answer. We can certainly go back and look at it. I don't know how that affects timing. I don't know, Matt, if you want to chime in here.
The only thing I was going to add, Russ, is that I'm not as in tune to the brand as Brian might be, so I'm going to defer to Brian on that. I think we're somewhat limited to some extent. And I know that cladding is going on that element the first week of June. So I think the way the building has been built and structured, I think the element that Jane likes so much, and we must be better in presenting our precedent images going forward, is probably not able to be accomplished because it's just not where we're at with the building at this point in time, unfortunately. Maybe we could have brought this in earlier, but circumstances as it may, we are where we are. And we do measure signs consistently throughout the city, so I acknowledge that too. It's just that interesting little tagline, because if you look at the precedent images, none of them have that tagline, and now that's something they've added as part of their brand standard. So I'm not really answering your question about what you'd like us to do. I'd like to ask Brian, if he's still on, first of all, I don't have any issue with the pin mounted letters, and I think Russ said that already, so we're happy to do that. But Brian, what does the brand really allow us to do here? Can you drop the by Marriott, and then if you did, then what do you do with the rest of the element to make sure it's in balance?
Yeah,
right?
so
Because you just don't spread the letters apart.
Well, I think that there's opportunity to perhaps, and I see Jane kind of shaking her head a little bit, but I'm not opposed to having the by Marriott. Maybe that's the opportunity. Maybe that's the thing that can add pop. If there's dimension to it, if there's a change in, you go back to your rooster idea. So one of the reasons that the rooster is so successful is because it's unexpected. You have the rooster on the corner with the bidirectional tails. You have by Marriott that is kind of this outlier factor. And is there opportunity there to put it on a different, Mr. Supalak, I'd look to you for a little bit of idea, what do you say, love on it a little bit. So I'd look to you to love on it a little bit and to brainstorm, you know, how that can pop. You know, that by Marriott is very important to the brand right now. Is there a way to make it very important to that sign?
Right, and it seems like we're talking a lot about placemaking art sign, and I'll go back to what Russ said, is that the whole art aspect of it, I could see how the committee is not seeing how that applies to our particular signage, and it's not any fault of ours or brand that it's not as creative as a logo as the North Market, which happens to be more artful given the nature of that business. But this is their logo, you know, and just like you said, is the by Marriott is very important to them. But you know, I'm kind of wondering if the placemaking art sign is really the issue here, and the going by the straight definition of, you know, activating the space. You know, is it the art wording of the definition, that it's not artful? Because, you know, in our mind, we feel like it does activate the space, you know, especially given the vertical nature of the building, the location of the building, and the visibility that you're going to see. I mean, don't forget, right now there's no buildings next to ours. You know, Block G is empty, and you know, I feel like there's going to be a tall building right next to ours, and to have an upper level sign on this west facing facade is not going to be as visible. I do see that there's, you know, if it was called a building ID sign, I feel like we would be having a different conversation, because building ID signs are allowed in addition to your typical signs, and the square footage is increased to a half a square foot per lineal foot of storefront, which we happen to have 400 square feet of storefront, which would allow us a 200 square foot sign. Or sorry, it would be 200 square feet of storefront would be allowed a 100 square foot sign, given that definition, and that kind of gets us out of the art, you know, wording of the sign type. So I'm not sure if there's any discussion or thoughts on that. If it's truly just the wording of the sign, it seems like everybody is okay with the style and design of the sign itself, but it's the sign type that we're kind of talking about.
So Ms. Martin, could you offer some clarity on the change in definition from the placemaking art sign, if they wanted to come forward with, you know, signs? In my mind, they're 4 and 5. Essentially, it's that wing both sides. If they were to come forward with a different definition on that particular sign, I understand it would also have a 100 square foot limit, and so it would still exceed the size. But can you offer some clarity there?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's really unique about these hotel projects, and the commission has seen a few of these before, right? The AC by Marriott is also in Bridge Park, is that they are asking not to go by the general regulations matrix that has the numbers and standards. They're asking, based on the merits of these signs in this building, can you approve them as is? We do refer, obviously, like Ms. Call has suggested, to those numbers to kind of benchmark things. The placemaking art sign is the largest sign that's permitted in the general regulations matrix, and that is a maximum of 100 square feet. For office tenants that have wall signs in upper stories, the maximum size for those signs is 60 square feet. And then the sign sizes decrease from there. So I'm not exactly sure what Mr. McNally was referring to, other than ground story tenants do get 1 square foot per linear foot, up to 50 square feet of wall sign.
So again, gentlemen, I'd like to pose the question, what you would like us to do this evening.
If you take a vote and it doesn't pass, we come back anyway, right?
Ms. Martin, clarity there?
So you would need to come back with a new application.
And there would be an additional charge on that new application, correct, Ms. Martin?
Correct. Mr. Boggs, do you
Boggs,
have
did you
anything to
have-
add? Yeah.
Well, one thing that I'm trying to consider whether there is a way to break up the motion on the package to get a sense of the support for because I'm not hearing a lot of debate about the other signs aside from the placemaking art signs. So I'm sitting here trying to think if we can break up the motion so that we get a sense of what the support is for those placemaking art signs. Move on from that. Maybe we can approve the balance, or come to a decision on the balance separately from the placemaking art sign.
So Mr. Boggs, if we were to break up the application and essentially approve or entertain a motion for approval of the sign package minus the placemaking, then Ms. Martin, wouldn't they have to bring forward another application for the placemaking signs and that amends their sign package?
I believe what Mr. Boggs is suggesting is that you simply make two separate motions, so the placemaking art sign could pass or fail on its own. And then they would have to your point, Ms. Call, open a new application for that new sign.
I just wonder from a commission perspective, the one thing that Ms. Fox has hit on before is it's very nice to see things all inclusive, in context. And so breaking it up and just having placemaking signs come back on their own, while staff does an excellent job at preparing a presentation that does draw in context, being able to look at the entire context at once is valuable from a commission perspective.
May I ask a question, Ms. Call?
Yes, Ms. Fox.
I feel as if the commission, and I may be reading it wrong, isn't opposed to this sign. I think that we're just not feeling as if the sign meets the criteria in its design to be at the level of something that is interesting enough to be considered a placemaking sign. Is there a way that the motion can be such that we approve the fact that the sign is there, but needs to be reconsidered in its design, either through staff and come back to planning and zoning, so that they at least know that we have a sense that it's going to be fine to have a sign at that place, in that location, on that architectural piece?
So in the past, Nikki, we have had the opportunity to send signs off to a consultant for approval or allow staff to reevaluate. The issue here, I think, is there's ambiguity. We want to make it pop. We want to make it different. I personally, and I'd like a straw poll on this, I personally would like the 100 square feet met, not the 122 square feet. But that ambiguity, I don't think lends very much help to the applicant to have some level of confidence moving forward, nor if we just carte blanche say, with the consultant's approval, nor does Planning Commission have that assurance that it comes back with what we're looking for, because it's very hard to articulate pop or love or jewelry. We use these, illustrative words, but really, what do they mean?
Can I ask a question, Ms. Cohen?
Yes, Mr. Fishman.
If I don't know how, I don't want to take a poll straw or anything, but I'm in favor of it now. I would really be in favor if they could just shrink the sign to the 100 square feet so it meets the code, and vote for it the way it is.
So straw poll, Ms. Fox?
Would that be a problem for you?
It's to me, it's not the size, it's the interest. So that I worry that it will look too small for the space. So no, it isn't about the size. It's the interest of the sign. It's not interesting enough for the corner, but I like that it's there.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. So I agree. I do think the interest plays a part, but I also would appreciate the sign. Ms. Kennedy, you?
I'm in the same place. If we approve this, then I worry that we'll get other applicants that come through. Again, we're setting precedent that a logo is placemaking art, and a logo or the name of a company is not placemaking art.
Thank
So
you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Schnur, straw poll.
I'm okay as it's been submitted, and I'm hearing you were solving for a couple variables at the same time. It sounds like some are okay with it as is, as am I. Some would like to see the design changed, and some would like to see the size changed. They're all sort of mutually exclusive.
Thank you. Mr. Sublak?
I too am generally supportive. I worry that this, how about this? I worry that the architecture without this sign is disappointing. So I appreciate this sign. Again, the scale is slightly over to me, but I'm generally supportive.
Okay, Mr. Grimes.
I'm supportive.
So Mr. Starr, turning back over to you, what would you like us to do tonight?
I'd like to ask for a vote on the package with the condition that was requested by staff regarding the pin mounted letters.
Ms. Martin, could I have you present? And at this time, I will entertain a motion.
I would move to approve with the two conditions.
I second.
Mr. Grimes, I believe that was your first.
Yes.
Mr. Schnur, was that your second? Wonderful. Ms. Beal?
Ms. Call,
No.
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
No.
Mr. Schnur, Ms. Kennedy.
no.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Ms. Martin. We appreciate your time this evening. Up next is Primrose School, case number 20-014CP, parcel 273-009147, concept plan. We'll pause while we ensure that the applicant is included in the meeting. Staff, please confirm when they are in. All right, thank you very much. This application is a request for a master sign plan for, oh, sorry, I'm repeating Spring Hill. Got to get up to speed now. This application is a request for the development of an approximately 9,200 square foot, two-story early childhood education facility. The 3.53 acre parcel is south of West Dublin Granville Road, about 450 feet west of the intersection with Dublin Center Drive, and is zoned Bridge Street District Office. Zach, welcome. You've been quiet this evening. We are ready for our case presentation. Take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, good evening. This is an application for review and approval of a concept plan for the Primrose School located within the Bridge Street District. Let's see if I can get this to move forward. There we go. This is the first step in a three-step process for new development within the Bridge Street District. The concept plan allows the applicant to provide details for their proposed character and nature of their proposed development. This includes the review of site layout, architecture style, building style, open space, building massing, and also street networks. Concept plans within the Bridge Street District do operate separately from a normal concept plan outside of the Bridge Street District. Concept plans do require the approval, before they can move forward to a preliminary development plan. Shown on the screen is the site in consideration today, highlighted in yellow. This site is just south of West Dublin Granville Road and is currently undeveloped. It is zoned office district within the Bridge Street District zoning code. Shown on the screen in the highlighted in yellow, at least, is the 100-foot, there's a 100-foot AEP easement that runs along the western portion of this property. This does limit a large portion of the developable land for the entirety of the site. Back in 2017, The commission did review a case for the Echo Neighborhood Hospital. However, this application has since been withdrawn from planning. To give you some context of the existing conditions of this site, there are 3 photos on the screen for your consideration. From the furthest left photo is the northern entrance from West Dublin Granville Road. As you will see later in the proposal, this is where the connection of a future neighborhood street will be proposed for this site. The central photo is a picture of AEP power lines. This is where the 100-foot AEP easement is located on the site. This photo is from West Dublin Granville Road. And the furthest right photo is just a picture of the entirety of the site from the northwest corner of the site. The Bridge Street District Street Network map was developed alongside the Bridge Street District Code to create a comprehensive network of streets throughout the Bridge Street District that allowed for development of roads that would accommodate different modes of transportation, and they would also create a street network that would connect the entirety of the district. In yellow on the screen is the site that we are considering tonight. To the north is West Dublin Granville Road. West Dublin Granville Road is a corridor connector and a principal frontage street. And to the east is a potential neighborhood street, which will be talked about later with this application. Principal frontage streets are among the most important streets to occupy within our code. As the site stands, any development would be required to be located along the principal frontage street, and with the development of the neighborhood street would need to occupy the corner of the intersection of the two. Because of the proposal of the new neighborhood street, it does redefine the bounds of the existing block that this site is located within. This block is proposed to be bound by West Dublin Granville Road to the north, the neighborhood street to the east, Stone Ridge Lane to the south, and Shamrock Boulevard to the east, or to the west, sorry. Because this block is going under new defined bounds, it does fall under the requirements for blocks within the Bridge Street District. These requirements are 500 feet in length on any given side, a maximum of 500 feet on any given side, and then a maximum perimeter of 1,750 feet for the entirety of the block. The applicant has not provided these specifications. However, due to preliminary research and study.
No, they've got me muted.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yes. This information has not been provided to staff quite yet, as it will need to be provided with the preliminary development plan. However, the bounds of the north and south portions of this block do not meet the 500 feet requirement, and the perimeter is exceeded as well. So this block will be required to gain a waiver with this application. However, this should not be a major deal because 3 of the roads are existing. Shown on the screen is the entirety of the concept plan for this site. The applicant is showing 3 buildings and site improvements throughout this entire site. However, the applicant is only presenting today the 3rd building, which would be the southernmost building for this site. There are no plans currently for the northern 2 buildings along West Dublin Granville Road or the site improvements that are north of the black dashed line. The applicant is proposing a lot split from east to west along the black dotted line shown on the screen. So anything shown today will be in reference to the property that is south of the dashed black line. Planning staff does have concerns regarding the proposed lot split. The current layout does not regard required setbacks or does not regard the shared access drive to the north of the site or the proposed lot as well. Planning is recommending that the applicant continue to work with staff to define the bounds of this lot split that will be beneficial and developable for both the south and the north lots here. The applicant is proposing an approximately 9,100 square foot facility for the Primrose School. The Primrose School would be considered under the daycare facility use, which is a permitted use within the office district. However, the daycare use does require specific use standards that would pertain to any playgrounds that would be attached with these uses. The applicant will be required to revise their plan to meet these requirements, one of which would include the location of the playground, as it would need to be set back behind the front elevation of the building. The applicant is proposing approximately 43 spaces on this lot alone. However, the applicant will be required to submit and gain approval of a parking plan for the number of parking spaces for this lot. The applicant is also proposing the extension of the neighborhood street, which was shown in the street network map. This neighborhood street is required for the frontage of this building, as without the neighborhood streets, any buildings that would be built on the site would be required to be built along West Dublin Granville Road. And the applicant is also proposing open space on the entirety of the site, but with the layout of the lot splits, there is currently no open space dedicated on this lot. Zoning code does require that there be 1 square foot of open space per 50 square feet of building footprint. So this will need to be shown on the preliminary development plan. Shown on the screen are the proposed elevations for this concept plan. The east elevation can be viewed from the neighborhood street. The north elevation can be viewed from West Dublin Granville Road. The west elevation can be viewed from the parking lot to the rear of the building, and the south elevation can be viewed from the access drive that is being proposed with this development. The applicant is proposing a loft style building, which is a permitted building style within the office district. It is proposing the use of primary materials such as stone, brick, and glass, with a cementous horizontal siding for a secondary material. A full analysis of the loft building will be required with the submission of a preliminary development plan, as this is not required for a concept plan. However, there are some details that planning staff would like to bring to your attention just for this for the concept plan. One would be the 2 towers that are proposed with this building. Towers are generally only permitted in 3 cases. These 3 cases would be that the site or building are located at the corner of 2 principal frontage streets, that the site is located adjacent to a terminal vista, and that any facade is located next to a permitted open space type. Currently, the building or site do not fall under any of these 3 circumstances. So as it stands, the 2 towers would not be permitted with this building. They would require to obtain a waiver for both of these towers or remove them from the plans in general. Planning has reviewed this application to all applicable concept plan criteria and are recommending approval with 10 conditions so that the applicant may continue to work with staff to develop a preliminary development plan. If there are any questions for staff, I'd be happy to answer them. We also have the applicant here to answer any of your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Looking to the commission. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Call. Mr. Hounshell, can you please speak a little bit more on the split of this lot? So specifically, my question is this a traditional split, or what type of guidance has been provided to the applicant as far as how the lot is divided?
So as without the development of the neighborhood street, this lot split could not happen. You know, anytime a lot is split, they require to have some sort of frontage to put that their building on. So the way, you know, with them proposing the neighborhood streets, they would be able to split this lot. It would need to meet the requirements of whatever building type they were proposing for this site. One concern that planning does have is that there are currently no plans for the northern portion of the site. So we would want to assure that if this lot were split, the northern portion would have an equal chance of being developed later down the road. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And then so the follow-up question for you is, does staff currently feel that there's an equal opportunity for development on the principal frontage portion of this lot as it currently is divided?
So from staff standpoint and what we've, my understanding of what we have displayed to the applicant is that, you know, with West Dublin Granville Road being a principal frontage street, it's a very important frontage that we, you know, we are hoping that there would be development happening soon along that frontage. So, you know, it is challenging. You know, the applicant has the right to move forward with this. We are working closely with them to make sure that any lot split here is beneficial for both the southern and northern properties. But there is still a lot of work that needs to go in before there would be a preliminary development plan. There are setbacks of 5 feet for rear yard and side yard, excuse me, that are currently not being met with the lot splits in terms of parking and also the underground stormwater. So there are some site, you know, there's some information on the site that will need to be rearranged. I'd be happy to let the applicant, when we are to that point, explain their reasoning behind what they are showing.
Thank you.
Ms. Fox.
Would it be fair to say that it's a difficult lot as it is to develop because it has an AEP easement. Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word. An AEP easement, and then it has a street that needs to be in place in order for this to go forward in any case, even if it was just one building. In looking at the lot split, it's cutting right through a parking lot, which I don't think is allowed. But secondly, my biggest concern, and Ms. Kennedy is bringing this up, but I want to clarify. By doing this kind of a lot split, or the possibility of was, are we severely limiting the ability for the front to be developed in any way? Because it seems as if with open space conditions, parking lot conditions, setback conditions, frontage conditions, we're almost putting ourselves into a position we might not be able to get out of by wanting to get a 161 development in there. Is that fair? Is that a fair question?
It is a fair question. So the frontage, you're correct. The frontage along 161 is challenging as it is, regardless of a lot split, due to any development would have to occupy, especially once that neighborhood street is developed, any buildings would have to occupy that corner of, you know, Dublin Granville and the neighborhood street. There's also a minimum, you know, frontage occupancy that they have to meet as well. I believe it was, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but due to the 100-foot easement running from east to west there, a waiver would be required regardless of any development going there. So that would happen lot splits, you know, whether the lot split happened or not. And I'll leave it to the applicant to speak to the reasonings for this as well, for why they would like a lot split. But that's something planning moving forward. We would make sure that development would be possible moving forward with that northern lot as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Henshaw. Mr. Pishman.
Yeah, I don't think we know enough about this to approve this. So when I looked through this today and drove out there, first of all, we're not even making the 5-foot setback with the piece that we know about, which is the daycare center, and we have no idea what's going to be in the other lot. We don't know what a tenant's going to be, how big the building's going to be. It seems like we don't have enough information. And what I've seen happen in the past is that if we approve this and we allow the lot split, we allowed him to put the building there, and 2 years down the road, they come back with something that is they're going to tell us is a hardship, that we let them do this and now they can't develop it. They can't develop it economically or whatever. So I don't think we have enough information. I would like to see how they're going to put the other building on it, or what I saw in the picture, 2 more buildings, and how they're going to meet the setbacks. I'm not in favor of putting a building on 161 that doesn't meet the setback. And so I think we've got a real problem here with approving anything. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fishman. I want to reiterate to the commission one of the very first slides that Mr. Hounshell presented. At this stage in the project, we're at concept plan, but there's very specific criteria that we're looking at the concept plan, and Mr. Fishman hit on this. The concept plan is meant to outline the character and the nature of the proposed development, including building massing, open space, location, street network, etc. So in the interest of moving things along, I'd like to turn some time over to the applicant before coming back to the commission for direction at that point. Mr. Alt. You're muted, Mr. Alt.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
You're quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. I want to turn this over as quickly as I can to Elena Miller, who's going to present the case. However, I did want to make one very important point. We have been operating under the assumption from the very beginning that we would have the opportunity to have these 2 potential lots function as one, with a suite of cross easements for access, utilities such as stormwater management and so on, that you would not be placing us in what we believe would be almost an impossible burden by asking us to have each one of the resulting eventually approved lots function entirely on their own, completely freestanding and without any relationship to either of them, which would take the obvious extreme would be to have 2 separate entrances off of the neighborhood street and so forth. That would be a virtual impossibility. We're equally aware of the challenges of the property and the history of the property and how it's gotten part way to the finish line on a couple of occasions, but found some unique challenges. And so our client has come to the table here very eager to see this, to make this work. We have been assuming, and he is aggressively marketing the Dublin Granville Road frontage. We have been assuming that we would have the opportunity to have a single entrance, as we have displayed here, that would feed into a conjoined parking facility with conjoined stormwater management, conjoined utilities, and even to a degree that would be possible once you had the opportunity to see the aesthetics of the building, that could have a relational feature, the building in the rear and the building or buildings in the north and the frontage. So if it's the sense of the Plan Commission that no, that's not the case, we have to completely independently develop each one of these lots, and it has to stand alone, then we would be in a position where we'd have to go back and have 2 entrances off of the neighborhood street. So if we could get a position on this, we're eager to work with and have enjoyed so far working with the staff, but and believe that we can ultimately come up with, because we have a very open-minded and very positively oriented client in this case. This entity owns and operates a number of Primrose schools, which are the absolute premier early childhood education concept in the United States. This family owns and operates a number of these. I think this would be the 6th one in the Columbus market, and are looking forward to being a part of the Dublin community. So I'm going to stop talking now and ask if you could at first address that question to us.
Thank you. So Claudia, I'd like to involve you for a moment here. We see applications consistently that are site development plans that have multiple buildings on the same parcel lot with sometimes shared parking agreements with adjacent parcels. What makes this application different from that holistic site plan that we've seen in the past?
I mean, I would say that we have no information whatsoever as to what is going to be in the front in terms of uses, in terms of parking needs. So I don't necessarily think that staff would push for 2 entrances of the neighborhood street. I think its shared drive aisle arrangement is still something that can happen with reciprocal easements being included. The shared parking, I mean, that's a tough question to answer because we don't know really what the uses of the daycare in terms of, is it like mangoes where people are coming and going, or is it really they're busy, between 7 and 8 and 5 to 6, and for the rest of the day they don't use a lot of parking. Then if office uses go into the front building or buildings, that would certainly allow itself for a shared parking and would likely be appropriate. It is just a lot of unknowns. I think that's where we're struggling with as well. And I think Ms. Fox alluded to that as well, is if the lot was created the way it is shown right now, it could potentially have negative impacts on the leftovers.
So Mr. Alt, I don't think, and the Planning Commission, please step in and correct me if I get the feel wrong. I don't think that what you're getting from us is, no, we don't like the project at all. It's just there is too much unknown for us to judge one portion of the parcel as part of a whole when we don't know what the other half would bring. And if we were to judge it all under its own criteria, then it doesn't meet the current requirements. So because there's too much unknown of the whole, then we have to judge based on what we do know. And what we do know is it doesn't meet what the concept plan requirements have. Mr. Alt, did you have question, comment there?
Yes, please. Therefore, let me just make one additional comment that might help to clarify this a little bit. The value of obtaining permission to build either by purchasing the land or doing a land lease or not doing a lot split at all, and merely developing with a land lease, a third-party independent, is a possibility. Of course, that's always in the mix as a development opportunity. What we have been endeavoring to do is create 2 more nearly co-equal lots, because the value of the ground is associated with how much ground there is, of course. And therefore, initially we had actually placed what would have been the northern boundary, the northern boundary of the early childhood education property in the middle of the access drive off the neighborhood street. But then we moved it to the south merely as we felt like the property line really became nothing much more than a term of art because of the fact that we would have a sufficient cross easements. We've also taken the time and have looked at the alternatives that would be available as complementary uses within that district. And we do know that there are some limitations. For example, no, of course, there couldn't be a nightclub with a necessity for 250 parking spaces, but complementary uses that would, under different ordinances, would be considered a conditional use, a medical use, an office building use, and things of that nature, that we are very much of the opinion that we would have enough parking. What we were hopeful of doing here was obtaining approval of a concept that we would like to be able to go forward and present the concept. And then as time passes, as we move forward through the preliminary and final site site approval process with the Plan Commission, bring forward additional detail as it emerges. As I said, the client is aggressively marketing the property, has had the opportunity to meet with and discuss this property with candidate purchasers or land leasees, and we'd just like to be able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Alt. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the commission for discussion. Mr. Fishman.
Yes, in looking at the property, as I said earlier, we don't have enough information. I don't think, of course, this is early to say this, that I could support it, not knowing what the other spaces, how you're going to develop the space and meet the code. I think as a city, we have codes for a reason, and we wouldn't want to approve a concept plan knowing that the first parcel isn't even meeting code, and the second wouldn't. And so I think I'm really in favor of this initial use that we know about, but maybe there shouldn't be a lot split. Maybe you should use the whole lot. And I think that sometimes we do this. I've seen it over the years that we try to put too much on too little, so I think that we'd be in for a huge headache if we approve this, and then we wait till the second one comes in and there's hardships and we've got to do variances and we've got too much on the property. So I couldn't be supportive of even approving a concept plan from what I know now.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Box, did you have something that you needed to interject?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note a couple of things about the concept plan stage that we're in with this application. That in addition, I know that we've had a lot of discussion about where the lot split that is proposed would occur. Oftentimes these are applications where there is discussion of building placement, sort of also the geographical layout of the site, and I think some of that has been presented. So I just wanted to encourage going through those criteria as well in the discussion. And also, I may be mistaken, but I thought that there was another applicant representative prepared to present, and I didn't know if there was
Elena,
to do that.
I think that was in reference to Mr.
Gotcha.
Alt's.
One thing I wanted to clarify as well is that what the requirement will be is a plat. So the street right of way would have to be dedicated, and then the lots would be created via plat. So it's not as simple as an administrative lot split. It would be something that comes to the commission and to council, preliminary and final plat.
Right. If a concept plan were to be approved either tonight, or if this were tabled and changes were made, the next stage would be preliminary development plan approval. So you have consistency with the concept plan, but more detail, and preliminary plat approval. So that would be two separate applications that would come back in front of this commission.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Ms. Miller, did you have a presentation that you wanted to share with the commission tonight?
So many of the comments that are in question, I'm the architectural representative, and Steve Butler is also on this call, part of our team. Many of the questions that are being brought to the table are solely dependent on layout of the site. I think that we are prepared to comply is the main objective that Mr. Alt was trying to reiterate. We are aware of the challenges. At this stage of the project, we need to work with the staff closely, as we have all discussed, and we are prepared to seek approval at this stage so that we can get to a more minute detail that you're requesting with the staff's guidance. We are very confident in our prototype. We know our brand well, And we know that many of the decisions we made may seem like nuance, but they're very intentional and specific. And I think as it comes to the site plan, a couple of the comments that you made regarding where is the open space, where are the setback not being met, things of that nature. You know, we agree. We don't disagree that those items are not in compliance. Our intent is to strategize, which we have done today. And we feel that based on our preliminary review of the work we submitted, we are not concerned about one requirement, i.e. the Primrose School building not meeting the requirements. We are confident that we can. With that being said, if you need more information via the site plan configuration, I know that Steve is prepared to dig in deeper detail regarding the site, and I'm prepared to dig in deeper detail regarding the building, but we are curious if that would be beneficial at this stage of the review.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. So what I'm hearing from the commission, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Grimes here in just a moment, is I don't think anyone is objecting to the Primrose School. It's the front side of the building that has, or excuse me, the front side of the lot that has two squares or rectangles drawn on it with no uses, no placing, and all of the other nuances, the stormwater management and the open space and the utilities and the frontages and all of that. Those are more important because of the big unknown in the front. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Grimes.
Yes, I think that it's abundantly clear that there's a lot of challenges and that you've got a lot of hoops to go through, even if we were to approve this tonight, as concept. With 10 conditions on the table, you've got a lot of work to do. And it does look like you're trying to jam a lot into a very small space. And I agree that, you know, the concept of the school is great, but, you know, what is it going to look like on 161? And how, you know, it just, you really looks like you're severely limiting the potential for the balance of the property. And we don't want to go into many years risking that ground laying fallow because of a mistake we make, maybe not tonight, but one of the next couple of hoops that you have to get through. But if you're going forward knowing that you're going to spend a lot of time and effort and money to try to make this thing work. And I think that ultimately we'd want to know what's going to be the look of the whole property. I'm sure council, I would imagine council would want to see it all before they'd agree to a split and having all the engineering I's dotted and T's crossed, or it'll never make it past there. So I would be inclined to, you know, hey, if you're gonna spend a lot of time and money, you're running a great risk from this point. I would like to see maybe this site get used because of the limitations with the AEP right away. That's gonna make this a challenge even more so. It looks like you're trying to do a lot in a real small space. That's my summary.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Ms. Kennedy.
Just a sec. Okay, I think I'm off mute now. Ms. Miller, thank you for your statement. And I think we're appreciative of Primrose wanting to expand their operation in Dublin. I think the council is in support of that. And we appreciate you want to work with staff and to, you know, correct the deviances, if you will, that are currently challenges for your operation and putting it in place here. But again, I'll go back to Mr. Fishman's initial comment. I think there are too many unknowns right now for me to be in support of approval for this package tonight. So I just want to put that out there. But again, I am in support of your business, of course, and hope we can see more from you in the future.
So looking to the applicant, would you like us to move forward with a motion, or would you like us to move forward and table this item and let you work with staff to come back with it fleshed out? Mr. Alt.
Yes, I think that there are some pretty significant items that need to be addressed. We've been operating under the assumption right from the very beginning that, and we've been very open with the staff, that the front use was going to be something that wouldn't be unless our client was able to obtain a concrete interest from a reputable developer with an appropriate use in the timeframes of what we've had here as we move forward, that we would be presenting to you a concrete use for the second half or the south half of the property. And it is a little frustrating, naturally enough, because we thought that we were in a position where we had a fair opportunity to present something with an expectation about the use on the northern half of the property. That all said, our client is very aware that this is an attractive and important parcel within the community of Dublin. We've experienced some interest in uses for the front that were well below the standards that we're certain will be applied to any potential use there. At the same time, in the very recent past, even under the unusual circumstances that we're functioning right now, our client has had the opportunity to see much more attractive opportunities coming forward. That all said, one of the underlying issues here, frankly, is, and this shouldn't be downplayed in any way, the lot is a peculiar lot. By that I mean it's deeper by far than it is wide. It has those two unusual site challenges that you mentioned at the beginning with the AEP easement and the neighborhood street. And we think we've come up with a strategy that works for those and have had advanced detailed conversations with AEP, and they're demonstrating a remarkable flexibility about the use of that easement for parking, which is one of the reasons why that's shown in our plan, number one. And number two, that was something that wasn't even a part of any prior proposals like the Echo Hospital. So I guess what I'm saying is we would prefer at this point to have a tabling to give us an opportunity to come back to the staff and have some very specific conversations about methodology that we're very confident about what we want to put together. We have an awful lot of detail. We've responded within our own firm to the Planning Commission review. And Elena was very forthright about that. We have lots of highly executed, highly thought out detail to share, but it seems like we're stumbling on this one issue, which is to say we think that there's a strong complementary opportunity here. We don't believe that we're trying to put, forgive the old saying, 5 pounds of coffee in a 3-pound bag. We very much don't agree. Also, there was one little comment that was made there, and we labor under this all the time, where there are nearly 400 Primroses nationwide, and none of them function like an elementary school, with a huge crush of traffic in the morning and another at another time in the afternoon. Rather, it's a much more diffuse traffic pattern and a much more diffuse parking utilization, which makes it this kind of cooperative use between us and another, like a medical use or a generic office use and so on, a very attractive candidate and a very viable one. So I'll stop rambling. I'm now asking if you would do us the kindness of tabling this so that our application, so we can go back and get with staff about that procedural issue. Zach?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Alt. Mr. Henschel?
Yes, if I may, if it sounds like we are moving towards tabling, just for the applicant's sake, I know we've talked a lot about the site in general. It may be good to maybe give some feedback regarding the architecture as well, because it is two portions of this application, the site layout and the architecture. So if it's, Ms. Call, if you would like to maybe consider talking through maybe some architecture before we table this.
Yep. Additionally, I would ask, even if we do discuss all of the details of the architecture, I would look for staff to work significantly with the applicant. You know the commission, you know what we like, what we don't like, what we expect, what we don't expect. So working with the applicant to understand what those criteria are, and any expected hurdles that they would likely see given the contents of the next more fleshed out application, I think would help us all and facilitate a faster resolution. So looking to the commission for the architecture details. Jane, I know that you had a comment on the towers themselves. So I don't know if we want to start there or if we want to start somewhere else. Someone want to kick us off?
I think that there are 3 criteria for towers in the Bridge Street district. The school wouldn't meet any 3 of those. So a redesign eliminating the towers would be a good first start. And I would say that I'm not opposed to a shared use of parking on that site. So it's not like I would expect the parcels to be separated out. So that's the direction I would give. I know that that was one of Mr. Alt's questions, and I would be okay with a shared use. But as for the towers, I think they need to be eliminated.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Ms. Miller, we'll turn time over to you at the very end. So Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Call. Generally, from the architectural perspective, I'm in agreement on not meeting the requirements for the towers within this space and within this district. However, I love that you had the big logo up there on the top of the tower. I think that's a really cool feature. I love how that looks. It's a school, so I can't imagine it's going to be cutting edge as far as technology or design goes. So generally speaking, the architecture seems simple and appropriate for this application. And also it seems in line with one thing that we do reference surrounding properties. And I know that the staff will work with you on that, or what are coordinating and materials that seem to go within the area. So just something to be aware of as you move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Fishman, any comments on the architecture?
I agree with the previous.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Supelak, any comments on the architecture?
I entirely agree across the board. The towers are a careful thing. The logo at the top is still an agreeable thing. So how that sort of comes to fruition in the architecture is always a nice touch. And of course, this palette and the materials, the use of materials is all pleasant.
Thank you, Mr. Supelak. Mr. Grimes?
I agree with the board comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Mr. Schneer?
Well, it appears we're all in agreement with respect to the towers. So when the applicant speaks again, I would just be curious, why did you propose the towers?
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. So Elena Miller, back over to you, Ms. Miller.
Sure, I appreciate all the questions, and it's interesting enough, the towers are the first thing that we plan to revise. And the simple answer to that is we read the code to allow for a parapet height of 2 foot to 6 foot, and we intend for the tower elements to meet that requirement. Initially, the towers were intended as a functional purpose more than an aesthetic purpose. So the access to the mechanical mezzanine, we were hoping to avoid screening of any kind, but we also agree that proportionally as well as simply it doesn't meet requirements, and we understand and will comply.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
As it relates to the character of the building, one of the case studies that we reviewed was the Penzone Salon. We agree that material transitions and a variety and diversity of materials is critical for a building of this size. Our goal is to not create a brick box with holes for windows. We are excited to expand the Primrose brand with a modern, up-to-date technology with innovative materials. And this is the first of its kind, and we're excited to bring that to Dublin. And as it relates to honestly, I think that's the best, as much as I need to share.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to table.
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Do I have a second? Ms.
Second.
Kennedy. Thank you. Ms. Beal?
Mr. Schneier,
He said yes.
oh, he did. I'm sorry, I didn't hear him. Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Thank you, Commission. And thank you, applicants. We really are looking forward to seeing Primrose in this location in Dublin, and we look forward to seeing the next more fleshed out application. Again, we've given direction to staff to answer your questions and to prep you for anything that you can expect in the next meeting. And so we hope for a very pleasant and expeditious meeting. Thank you very much for your time this evening. All right, on to our next case. Staff, can you invite the Chase Bank applicant in? Case number 520-041CP, Chase Bank located at 6515 Sawmill Road. This is a concept plan.
Hey there, it's Jim.
Can we confirm that the applicant is here? Tim Messick, I see you here. Are we expecting anyone else from this application?
I believe we have all three.
All right, thank you. This application is a request for the construction of an approximately 4,100 square foot, one-story bank and associated site improvements. The 0.85 acre site is northwest of the intersection of Sawmill Road and Banker Drive in its own Bridge Street District, Sawmill Center neighborhood. So Zach, turning time over to you, Mr. Hounshell, take us away.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Commission. This is a request for review and approval of a concept plan for the Chase Bank located within the Bridge Street District. As stated with the Primrose case, this is the first step in a three-step process. The concept plan allows the applicant to outline their character and nature of their proposed building and site improvements. This would include the review of the building massing, site layout, architecture style, building style, and associated details. As stated before, this is the concept plan for a Bridge Street District application is different than a typical concept plan, as we will be looking for an approval to move forward to a preliminary development plan.
Mr. Hounshell, did we lose you?
You might have lost the PowerPoint. Give me 1 second.
All right.
There we go. On the screen highlighted in yellow is the site in consideration today. This site is located at the corner of Sawmill Road and Banker Drive. It is zoned Sawmill Center neighborhood. This site, as you see a zoom in of this, is completely developed currently. It was the original site for a Boston Market restaurant. That business has since left this site, and the site is currently vacant. The applicant will be looking to demolish the existing building and redeveloping the entire site moving forward with this. Shown on the screen are some existing conditions of the site. The furthest left photo is the southern, from looking out towards Banker Drive from the southern entrance. This is a full access entrance into the site. The central photo is a view of the existing building from Sawmill Road to the east. And the furthest right is another view of the building from the south entrance or Banker Drive. The Bridge Street District Street network, as stated earlier, was developed in coordination with the Bridge Street District zoning code to create a comprehensive network of streets throughout the Bridge Street District that are developed to accommodate different modes of transportation and to create a street grid to connect the entirety of the Bridge Street District. This site is shown in yellow on the screen. To the east, it does border Sawmill Road, which is a corridor connector and principal frontage street, and Banker to the south, which is an established neighborhood street. Principal frontage streets are some of the most important streets within the district, and they hold very high standards in terms of architecture, streetscape, and connectability. Any redevelopment of the site will require the building to occupy the corner of Banker Drive and Sawmill Road. This site is also included within the Sawmill Center neighborhood, which does have its own separate requirements in terms of offering unique opportunities to provide a vibrant and active mixed-use environment, as well as improved streetscapes and entrances into the Sawmill Center neighborhood off of Sawmill. Zoomed in on the screen is the specific location of this site. And as you follow the legend on the right, this location is adjacent to a potential gateway location. The information regarding the Sawmill Center neighborhood standards has not been provided to staff at this point in time. However, this will be required to be looked at and conceptually analyzed as we move forward to a preliminary development plan. Shown on the screen is the proposed concept plan for the Chase Bank. It is approximately 4,100 square feet. The bank use is a permitted use within the Sawmill Center neighborhood. It does also include an ATM drive-through, which is located along the western portion of the concept plan. The ATM drive-through will require a conditional use moving forward. This would be required to be done alongside the preliminary development plan. The applicant is proposing 30 parking spaces. This does exceed the maximum of 14 parking spaces for this size of building and bank use. So the applicant would be required to obtain a parking plan along with the preliminary development plan. The site does have two existing access points, one being from Sawmill Road to the east, which is a right in, right out, and to the south from Banker Drive, which is a full access entrance and exit. Staff is working and has worked with the applicant preliminarily regarding the relocation of this southern access. Something that our staff is looking to do is align the access point with the access point of Piata to the south. We will continue to work with the applicant to determine the feasibility of this relocation and whether it is possible. The applicant is also proposing an approximately 740 square foot open space to the north of the building, which is shown on the concept plan as the open seating area. This does exceed the minimum required open space for the site. However, the information regarding, or specific information regarding this open space has not been provided at this point. The applicant will need to continue to work with staff to determine the final details regarding the specific open space type. Shown on the screen are the east and south elevations of the Chase Bank facility. The east elevation can be viewed from Sawmill Road, and the south elevation can be viewed from Banker Drive. The applicant is proposing primary materials such as brick, glass, and stone, with a complementary secondary material being a metal canopy that is used throughout the building. The building type is a commercial center out parcel building, which is a permitted use within permitted building type within the Sawmill Center neighborhood. And shown on the screen are the west and north elevations. The west elevation can be viewed from the parking lot to the rear of the building, and the north elevation can be viewed from the open space that is proposed on the site, as well as the parking lot. And also to note, the applicant has provided staff and the commission with a preliminary detailed analysis of the building type. The applicant will continue to work with staff to finalize this analysis, as it is not required at the concept plan stage. However, they did want to provide it with the concept plan application. And shown on the screen is the ATM drive-through structure as well. For your reference, they are proposing a brick for the base with a metal canopy over top of the drive-through. The applicant has also submitted preliminary signage with this application. This was included in the commission's packet, but was not considered with the staff report. So staff wanted to make sure that this would be made aware to the commission that the applicant has submitted for your review, just some locations and designs of proposed wall-mounted signs. The applicant is proposing currently 4 wall-mounted signs. Code does only require 1 wall-mounted sign per street frontage. So the applicant would be required to either meet code or pursue a master sign plan with the preliminary development plan. Planning staff has reviewed this to all applicable concept plan criteria and are recommending approval with 6 conditions. The agenda does say 5 conditions. We have changed it to 6 to include the signage condition as well. If there are any questions for staff, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, we do have the applicant here to speak on behalf of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanschel. Planning Commission, looking to you. Any questions for staff at this point? Giving head shakes. All right, applicant, oh, Mr. Grimes, sorry, almost missed you.
In the required parking plan, is there a concern in the number of spaces at all, or the flow, or do you have any thoughts about that initially? And is this an opportunity, I don't know, to eliminate another right in, right out, relay that corner, because they do have adequate access off of Banker. I'm just thinking of the volume of traffic on Sawmill, if this is an opportunity to limit an ingress and exit, is that a possibility at this time? So those are 2 thoughts.
So for your first thought, which would be the parking consideration, that was a concern that we had originally with the applicant, and we did display that to them as well. We have, and they will speak more to this as well, they're prepared to speak, but they are consolidating 2 other Chase Bank sites to this site, and due to the model that they are proposing, that is why they are showing 30 parking spaces. I will let Tim also explain more why they're wanting to do that. And with the southern access points, I would defer to our engineering to determine whether that's acceptable, because currently it is a full access, and that would be the only full access route onto the site. So I'm not equipped to speak to that at this point in time, but I'd be happy to consult with our engineering team to figure that out.
Well, I don't have a problem with the south. It's the Sawmill part that I would be concerned about. If it's an opportunity to eliminate traffic coming in and out there, that maybe we should show an interest in eliminating that.
Aaron, would you like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Grimes, that exact consideration is something we've discussed with our traffic engineers and also the city engineer. So part of the consideration when we looked at that was, 1, the access point being longstanding, meaning it's operating that right in, right out condition for quite some time. Part of it was also we were looking at the applicant's site and thinking about the site circulation. So we felt that it was a fair consideration to leave that access point to help distribute some of the traffic and not push it all to the signalized intersection and to the southern access point. So when we evaluated that site access, that was our determination when we confer with our traffic engineer and the city engineer.
Yes, Ms. Fox.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question of you, Aaron. You know, as I look at the satellite image of this, and I looked at it today, one of the things that the Sawmill neighborhood, especially the Sawmill frontage, is you're trying to get some sort of pedestrian access there. So let's just say that this develops and then the big parking lot to the north becomes a parcel that's developable. You're going to be crossing 3 in and out driveways, which isn't very pedestrian friendly at all. I mean, if we're talking about what this is going to look like in 10 or 15 years, as we're starting to see redevelopment, maintaining these in and out drives really are just auto friendly, but not pedestrian friendly necessarily. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that was something, and thank you for bringing that up, because that is something when we were looking at that access point, we were considering. So 2 things we've done as a compromise, kind of keep that balance or kind of help it be as pedestrian friendly, is we would require them to narrow the width of that driveway. So it's a very wide drive. If you look at it today, if you're looking at the aerial image, it probably even pops out on that image. So what we've asked them to do to keep that point would be to narrow that drive, so limit the disruption. And then we've also placed a condition. We requested that with the site development, they would install a pedestrian path along both frontages, kind of just encourage and get that infrastructure put in place. So we did think about those things, and that was our response to try to find that compromise between site access and pedestrian friendliness of that corridor.
If the commission were to consider, though, that we feel that 2 driveways, we would prefer not to have a driveway on Sawmill because of pedestrians, would it function well with just 1? Could it function well with just 1 on Banker?
From a traffic standpoint, it would.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments at this point? So looking to the applicant, Mr. Messick.
Good evening. I appreciate everybody's time and working into the extended hours here, so thank you for that. And want to start off by saying staff has been wonderful to work with. We did bring this proposal late last year, and we've come a long way. So from the layout of the site, from some of the other elements, we have been working with Zach, Claudia, and with Aaron to really product improve the site. So I appreciate all their hard work and efforts, and I think we have come together with kind of that middle ground, something that's workable from a development standpoint and will be a huge benefit for the constituents in the area. This is a relocation of the existing Chase Bank that is about a mile north next to 270. And this will be a full service branch. So we're bringing all of those services down to this site. One of the things that we've incorporated in is the safety deposit vault that will be a key component, as well as the redesign of the entire building. Many times the banking centers tend to be prototypical type structures. This is a complete one-off with the dual access, which is one of the items that we work with staff on, really addressing the Sawmill frontage road and bringing that into the branch. From a safety and security standpoint, that obviously has an impact on how we lay out our interiors and the efficiency, which we've been able to work through, but the efficiency of the branch. So that is one of the site constraints that we've been able to work on the design side and kind of incorporate that into our layout and planning. The full service nature of the branch will be a walk-up teller line at the interior. We have 6 offices for financial analysts, personal bankers, loan officers, and the shift, and I don't want to get too much into it because it'll take time, but the shift has been from kind of the quick ATM, quick teller line transactions, getting your cash. And we're going now to obviously a cashless, touchless society, online banking, those kind of things. But the importance is sitting down with individuals and meeting with them, going over their mortgages, their loans, their financial planning, starting out from college age and even prior to college age, all the way up to obviously the more mature years. So it's that relationship that we've created with the new branch bank of the future. To that end, the teller line is de-emphasized. We've brought in more of an office component, kind of a living room component. And I mentioned that in that it kind of sets us up on the interior of the branch to lay it out a certain way that works for the site. From an open space standpoint, a lot of the open storefront is addressing the hard corner, that gateway. So we've been able to design the building in a way that I think is sympathetic to the development code and kind of what the municipality is looking for. The drive-through component, which we are requesting conditional use for, is located to the rear of the site, consistent with the development code requirements. And that kind of lays out the site to kind of that L shape that you see with some of the parking requirements and some of the access points for the drive-through. So I think it works well with the existing infrastructure and curb cuts that we have for the site. One of the things that when we took a look at this parcel was the access points. I would say without the 2 access points, this becomes, just from our use standpoint, less desirable and less developable from a site standpoint. So that's one of the things that really we wanted to work into the plan and work with staff and engineering to make sure that it was something that everybody could support and we could provide the public benefit by some of the sidewalk improvements, modifying those curb cuts and entry points, and then also some of the traffic signal improvements with the pedestrian access there. One of the other benefits is also the larger open space area, which we want to go above and beyond as part of the gateway element to create kind of that cornerstone with piazza to create kind of that entrance point. 2 things that we're looking for additional consideration from the Plan Commission on is the parking count. And we realize it is quite a bit above the 11 to 14 range for the development guidelines. And the reason for that is kind of that office component. With the financial analysts, many times they meet with a couple, and it could be 2 individuals who arrive at the site separately. And then along with that employee parking, we have a need from anywhere between 18 to 30, depending on the time frame and the days of the week. So for those elements, we really stress that kind of 30 parking spaces is what we're looking for. Less than that, and it would be something that would affect our business and timing. So we would like to request that exception if possible. The other thing that we're looking for is some of the architecture of the building. We've designed it so the front of house is off the corner, but working with the third-party land planner in their analysis, we have highlighted certain areas that were a little deficient. And those are the clear glazing areas on the west facade and mainly the north half of the west facade, and then also the north facade. And the reason behind that is our back of house areas where we have our cash safe, we have our safety deposit vault, the data room areas. Those are kind of tucked to that northwest corner. So those are the areas that we want to limit from a safety and security standpoint, obviously clear glass and some of those elements. So we look to work with staff to create architectural elements, but ask that there may be consideration for an exception for the clear glazing in that northwest corner, if that's something that's amenable to the board or to the commission. And then the last item, and I'll turn it over to Jennifer Carr, who is with Chase Bank, the regional lead for signage and merchandising, to discuss some of the signage elements that we've presented tonight and look to get additional feedback on those elements as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Missick. Ms. Carr?
Hello, Jennifer Carr. I'm the regional signage lead for Chase. And I was just looking tonight to get a conceptual overview or some additional feedback on the branding elements that we're recommending on the building. We are showing 4 signs, 3 letter sets on the east, south, and north elevation. Our west elevation sign is an interior sign that would be right over the door facing the parking lot. We tend to like to have branding over our doors for customer entrance and visibility to go inside the bank. Again, this is just conceptual review, initial feedback. They are 24-inch letters. We were thinking halo illumination on the building, and just wanted you to consider giving us that feedback tonight. So when we come back, we are in line with everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Mhm.
So looking to the commission, we'll start with Ms. Kennedy.
All right, thanks, Ms. Call. So I think Mr. Messick asked for specific feedback on the parking count and the building architecture. And I just wanted to commend the applicant for first and foremost going above and beyond on the open space minimum. And in light of that and your explanation on the usage of this building, and I'm a dual working family, so I get it. Like I drive separately with my husband to evening meetings with financial planners, things in that space. So I understand the concept to go beyond the parking requirements. And to me, that makes sense. So I'm okay with the parking overages, given your explanation. And also in light of the fact that you're exceeding the current open space requirement. So I'll speak to that one. I'll defer to Mr. Supalak on building architecture. He's our architecture on the team. Signs, I have no concerns with the signs. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Supalak, why don't we put you next on the spot?
I like the architecture. No qualms about it. Your floor plan sort of, I guess I'm going to, speaking specifically to your northwest corner where you have some solid walls. Your floor plan sort of tells you where those want to be. I understand that entirely. I also suspect that there'd be a great sort of landscape plan around this building when we finally see it. I agree the signage is appropriate. I have no qualms with the site usage. If we were to eliminate the drive-in aisle, we would, everything Mr. Messick touched on, we would sort of drastically reduce the viability of this site for a lot of different uses, not simply theirs. So I appreciate the fact that they're sort of meeting us in the middle and providing the sidewalks that are not there, providing the adjustments to the curb cuts, those types of things, making all that work in a lot of different ways. I really have no qualms with this. This is a lovely project.
Thank you, Mr. Supalak. Mr. Grimes, can I go to you next?
Yes, thank you very much for the feedback on the parking and the needs and so forth. And I fully understand the need for the in and out off of Sawmill. I just hope engineering will know. And as Jane had mentioned earlier, you know, it's a bigger issue beyond this parcel coming down Sawmill that needs to be addressed in the future. And that would even make your entrance even better by not having multiple cuts in and out prior to getting to that point. But yeah, I like the architecture. I like the design. I like the layout of the lot. I think there's so much good about this because it really isn't all that big of a parcel, and you're making a lot of use of it, and a good use, I think. So yes, I like what I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Mr. Fishman, can I go to you next for feedback for the applicant? Still muted.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think there's an extra sign, though. I think we're out of code with the sign, and I think the landscape from the pictures I saw in our packet, the layout looks terrific. I think I like everything about it. Like my previous commissioner said, I would like to see the signs in code. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think there is an extra sign, and it puts it out of code. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And because there will, is that true? Do we have an extra sign?
Zach, can you speak to that?
Yes, so per code, single tenant buildings, they would be required for building mounted signs. They would only be allowed one sign per street frontage. So technically they'd be allowed to have two. They are proposing 4 at the moment. So should they move forward with this, should the commission be supportive of that, a master sign plan would be required.
Okay, the reason I brought it up is that I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other redevelopment in that corridor. And I think here we go again with that word precedent, but I think that the building will have plenty of exposure. And I think everything else I like, and I agree with my previous commissioners, but I really would like to see you meet code on the signs, because I think if you don't, we're going to get a lot of signs on in that sawmill corridor in the redevelopment. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Call.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Schneer.
I have a few comments with respect to the signage. I'm fine with that. As I look at it, it seems to be the right number of signs for the way the building is laid out. And I do like the architecture. I started with Joni Mitchell. They paved Paradise and put up a parking lot, but that Boston market was hardly paradise. But I'm still struck with the number of parking spaces, and you're the experts. Chase is certainly experts on the future of retail banking, but it just doesn't seem to be going that way. And I'm not taking issue with all the studies and experience you have, but I'm just questioning in my own mind the necessity of all that parking, given the trends in banking that, of course, you know better than me. So that's just an observation. It's not a position per se. Maybe it will become one at some point. And then finally, I'm asking for a friend, can you make the ATM passage driveway just a little wider? I won't say who that is, but is there a standard that you all adhere to? And why isn't it just like 12 inches wider?
All right, Ms. Fox, we'll go back to the applicant when we're concluded here as a commission. Ms. Fox, did you have questions or comments?
I do. I'm kind of looking at this from a little different angle. You know, we're concentrating obviously on the building itself and the site, but the redevelopment of the Sawmill Center asks for, especially on Sawmill Road, that it is a very walkable mixed use core where you're invited to, I don't know how many people will be invited to walk down Sawmill Road at some point in the future, but this is sort of another bookend to a really attractive development on the south side, which is Piata. Piata has engaged people for sitting outside. It has started to do what we want Bridge Street to do. And I see the Chase Bank as the other half of the bookend. It's a gateway. So what I'm looking for here is, as I look at the satellite image, there's a lot of parking lot all surrounding this particular parcel. I think there's an opportunity here for Chase to do something really special. And what I would ask of them is that imagine that 10 years down the road, the other half of the bookend is a fascinating gateway piece to Banker Drive. And what I'm suggesting maybe is this. I know that I don't know architecture like maybe Mr. Supalak does, but I know how I feel when I go up to a building or past a building. And if I were to pass on Sawmill as if I were a pedestrian and we had sidewalks all along, I'm going to turn that corner and nothing's going to hit me that's very interesting. So maybe the open spaces that they're considering, instead of being next to the driveway, is maybe a piece of art on that corner, or maybe that open space really does activate the streetscape. They may not want people out there eating or hanging around the bank, but maybe a piece of art would do something that makes a little bit more energy apparent as you're walking by it or you're driving by it. I think that they mentioned that it's a very customer friendly. They're looking for living rooms. So what is it about the frontage of Sawmill that would make a pedestrian maybe be invited to walk into your bank? Could you do something in the use of materials or landscaping or the way you designed your front door that says, you know, we welcome you here. This is a place that you could stop on this corner and come in and talk to us, and instead of just being something that you walk by. I think that you have an opportunity here to begin to create something really unique on this corner that may eventually jumpstart something next door to you and farther north. And I would just encourage you to think about doing something a little bit more interesting as a way to, as if you had many pedestrians walking by you. And that gateway is just as inviting as Piata is today. I'm not opposed to that much parking. I'd rather not see it, but if you do it, I see there's some green spaces down the middle, like along Island. I'd hate to see you just drop a tree in a well and another tree in a well, and maybe that entrance into that parking space from Sawmill Road could be designed in a way that is so attractive that you don't notice that there's a massive parking back there, and that the landscaping in the back actually created more of an oasis instead of another blacktop. I just think there's lots of opportunities at this corner, and I'd like to see you do that. But other than that, I think the bank would be a welcome addition.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. I'll conclude with some comments, and then we'll turn it back to the applicant for the couple of questions that were posed by the commission. First and foremost, I think it's a lovely building. I think the orientation of the building, bringing the building up to the front of Sawmill, I drove by this recently and was amazed. I'd never noticed that building before because it was set so far back, and yes, it's vacant and there's no cars parked there, but even still, with the parking up front, it just becomes a sea of parking lot. I think the orientation of the building, and Jane pointed out the island between the drive aisles and that parking structure, the orientation of the building is inviting in and of itself. It's also much more pleasant to drive down a road and see the landscaped and nice architectural sites rather than cars. And, you know, I like cars, I'm a big fan, but this is a welcome change to that Sawmill corridor. Additionally, I float on the other side of the parking issue. I don't like to see cars parked on roads. I don't like to see, you know, every single spot taken up all the time. It just makes it always look congested and busy and frankly, not very pleasant. And so I don't mind the over parking. I'd much rather have an open spot next to me than have these little tiny parking spots where I can't even open my car doors without risking the wind blowing my door into someone else's vehicle. So if I happen to go to a parking lot when it's 60, 70% full instead of 80, 90% full, I'm a happy camper. I have no issue with the right in, right out existing, and overall, I am looking forward to another great Chase Bank location. Your facility put in one of the newer buildings in the Plain City Costco shopping center, and it's beautiful, it is inviting, and it's busy. And so to Jane's point, you know, yes, you have opportunity at this corner, perhaps to kickstart something else, and maybe that something else also needs funding. And wouldn't it be great to have a partner right around the corner? So overall, I am pleased with it. I'm looking forward to seeing the more detailed landscape plan, but I'm very appreciative of the application. So back over to the applicant here. There were a couple of call outs. The clear glazing on the northwest corner, I also have no problem eliminating due to what's inside the walls there, and Mr. Supelak touched on that. Are there any other items that you need clarification on from the commission tonight before we move forward?
Well, thank you first and foremost for all of the feedback. Wonderful input, and it's all items that we'll incorporate into our future steps. to speak to some of the drive-through dimensioning and layout. We will absolutely work with engineering and staff to modify kind of that curb cut on Banker and how that relates to the drive-through and make that an efficient movement. So we fully understand the synergy there. And then as far as landscaping, obviously this was just kind of the first initial foray. So the open space area we are very excited about, as well as some of the landscaping that brings you around the corner as part of the gateway element. And we realize we have work to do with staff to make sure that that meets the expectations. The last item is from a signage perspective. Just wanted to add additional feedback on some of the signage allowable. We're trying to find the right mix of the signs versus what's allowed versus what makes sense for this development, for this parcel. And we kind of got away from the ground signage that is part of the code. And instead, we wanted to be sympathetic with the building signage. So the ground signs that we were allowed by right have been omitted in lieu of some of that building signage that we feel is more sympathetic and appropriate for this site. So those are things that we can incorporate into the master sign plan, the parking plan, and then also the preliminary and final approvals. One of the last items that we're interested in doing is we want to start groundbreaking as soon as possible and kind of get the momentum back and get that going with some of the delays we've had. So we're very interested in the possibility, if it's feasible, of incorporating in preliminary and final as part of our next step, pending all of these items have been addressed to the commission's liking. So that's something, if there's feedback we could obtain tonight on the possibility of preliminary and final at the next meeting, or whether that's something that is not feasible at this point.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Messick.
your time.
Thank you. Staff, looking to you, Mr. Boggs and Ms. Cusack, on preliminary and final brought in conjunction with one another at the next meeting. Do we have precedent? Do we have any concerns with that?
That is actually a decision that can be made by the planning director per the code. And we've had this conversation with Jenny, and it seemed as though that as far as details are concerned with this concept plan, it would be an appropriate step, especially since it is a single-use building, and they've done a lot of analysis for the code already at this point. So she felt comfortable that that would be an appropriate thing to do.
Mr. Messick, for what it's worth, you make that decision a little bit easier with the amount of detail that you brought forward in the concept plan over and above what was required at the concept plan level. So with Claudia's comments there, I don't see any concern with your bringing preliminary and final back at the next meeting. Ms. Fox.
Before we make a motion, is it worth a discussion, because this is a gateway, a potential gateway, and gateways are required by code to have something interesting, at least as you enter them. It's either a tower, or a piece of art, or a visual vista. My suggestion would be to condition this to have some consideration for a piece of art on that corner, to create that bookend of interest between Piatta's interesting outdoor patio dining and the bank's corner opportunity to be able to be another welcome mat into. I'd like to hear if the commission would support the possibility of suggesting that to Chase to consider artwork on that corner.
Are you looking for a suggestion or a requirement?
I'd like to make it a condition, actually. It's a gateway, and I don't see that that we're doing anything in particular to create some interest at these gateways, and I think that's an intent of the Bridge Street Code to do so. Yes.
All right. So looking to the applicant to see if that would be something that you'd be amenable to, and then we'll go to the commission to see if we want to make that a requirement.
As shown on the plan, there's some open seating area. You referenced Piatta's outdoor seating. Would something along those lines be acceptable?
Ms. Fox?
I would say that it probably wouldn't be used, and I guess it would be more interesting to see I mean, I would be open to see some design element at the corner that creates a gateway interest. I won't tell you what that should be, but I think that's an important element that needs to be added at the corner to help kind of get a little excitement and vitality right there at the street.
So Ms. Fox, looking for spitball ideas at this point, you know, Chase has a pretty unique and pretty interesting logo. The kind of squared off corners, I don't even know how to describe the cube looking thing that is Chase's logo. If something like that were incorporated into an art piece, would that meet kind of that pizzazz that you're looking for?
I guess I'm not looking for a logo, but I am looking for an interesting element. And that element, I don't want to design from the bench, but I do think that there should be a design element at the corner to satisfy the gateway intent of Bridge Street, which is something visually interesting that invites you into that gateway. So I would like that to be a condition. And I don't know what that is. I think I leave that up the flexibility of Chase architects and designers to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Boggs.
I was just going to point out that in the code, and I think the provision that Councilmember Fox is referencing with respect to the Sawmill Center neighborhood points out that they are approved with the final development plan. So something that the commission, if the applicant moves forward with the simultaneous tracks for preliminary and final, the commission should see an option there with that final development plan. And the code speaks specifically to designs that are pedestrian oriented in scale, including combinations of architectural elements, landscape features, or public open spaces. Gateway elements should enhance the character of the public realm, consistent with walkable urbanism, and provide a sense of arrival to the area. So those items are in the code as it stands today. So if there is thought that a condition is necessary to get some kind of gateway feature, I would say that it is not, unless you want to get more specific than what the code has.
I don't think it necessary. I don't want to design it, but I do want that it is something that we pay attention to when it comes back, and an expectation for Chase to consider as they go forward in their preliminary and their final development plan.
I'm seeing a nod from Tim. So with that being said, I will entertain a motion.
Well, can I add one thing?
Oh, yes, Mr. Fishman.
Mrs. Fox, Ms. Fox's points well taken. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I remember when we were doing the code, and we thought, and I remember going home thinking that those gateways should be something that people wanted to take their picture at. And in other words, some kind of art that they'd say, oh, pull into Chase, and when mommy and daddy's in there, we'll get your picture in front of this, whatever it is, piece of art. And so I think that's something you might want to think about, something that I think that's what Ms. Fox kind of has in mind. And I remember thinking that when we were working on that code, that would be something that, as I said, that you say, boy, that's really neat. Like our ears of corn. I don't expect you to do something like that, but that's something that if you go there on a sunny day, there's always somebody there getting their pictures taken at that day for different reasons probably, but they are. Also, I would like to see you have the sign code meet code. Now you say you're eliminating some and so on. I don't care, just so it meets code, because I think that's going to be a beautiful area, and I think that's going to be redeveloped. And I think that we don't, the board, I don't think is going to want to have to deal with Chase didn't follow code. We shouldn't have to either. So other than that, I think it's great. So thank you for the time, Ms. Call.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Yes, Mr. Grimes.
I would move to approve with the 6 conditions of staff.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Kennedy, I have a second. Ms. Beal.
Ms. Fox,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Schneier,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Thank you, Mr. Messick and Mr. Burke and whomever else is here from Chase. Ms. Carr, I missed you. We look very much forward to seeing this project move along and hope to do it in a very expedient manner. So welcome again to the City of Dublin, and we're looking forward to having you for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, it looks like we're to the communications portion of the evening. Is there anything that staff needs to communicate to the commission? We'll go that direction first.
No, we do not have anything other than a reminder that we are confirmed for our special meeting with ARB on the 4th of June. So that would be the next time we would all be together.
Thank you, Ms. Husak. One item from my side, based on the conversation tonight and our previous conversations, I'd like to at least bring up for discussion, and this is probably out of our purview, but more along the city council line. So Jane, looking to you, with these corner art pieces or these gateway pieces or even development art pieces, if there is a way for us to entertain, I know a lot of applicants, that's just not their forte. That's not where they're comfortable. They're comfortable either designing the side of a building or they're landscape architects or something like that. We offer fee in lieu for a number of different things. If there were opportunity for us to allow for fee in lieu, maybe they could dedicate some open space to the city and the city could install something that is that what we're looking for. And then council kind of has this provision for, we have money very much like our bed tax that comes back that we use for those, you know, the parks and the city art and all of that. If we had some other mechanism, I think it's very hard to be, I put my applicant hat on for a minute and I sit there and say, okay, I know you want to keep it generic enough that I have freedom to do it, but I'm not in the brain of council and I'm not in the brain of the commission to know what it is. And so if we offered them, we're going to have some applicants who do a stellar job and they're going to bring forward something that is exactly in the vision of the city. Then we're going to have others who just stop and they don't know what to do with that. And give us direction, give us something. And so in order to meet both the applicant who comes forward and says, hey, I have this killer piece and you're going to love it. And we do, versus the other applicant who is that, deer in the headlights, having that bi-directional path might make it easier on applicants and easier on staff as they're kind of guiding these applicants through the process to know what to expect at the next steps.
I totally agree. I think there's always options, right? And we have a wonderful Dublin Arts Council that could always give advice. But I do think that, and some applicants aren't going to be asked this, but these gateways, if you imagine this Sawmill Road in 10 or 15 years, and it has this fabulous street front and things that activate it, we don't see it now because all we see is parking spaces. But if we don't ask for it now, we'll never get it. And so you're right.
Of course.
I think it's worth a discussion, especially among us and with planning and, and to bring it, and I will bring this back to council as ways that we can encourage and incorporate the ask for art and the practicality of how one affords to do that, because maybe the bank can afford it, but possibly a small restaurant wouldn't be able to, right? So I agree with you. I think we do have to look at the options, but I also believe that we really do have to remember that some of these spots, especially these gateways, we need to be sure that they're really substantially fun, and interesting.
Thank you for that. Any other items for communication this evening?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yeah, I really appreciate your view, Ms. Call. I think that's really view well taken, both of you. It is. I think the one missing link there is money. I think that your point is very well taken, that a company like Chase might not want to hire somebody to develop a piece of artwork. On the other hand, if we could require them to put some money up, because if we let the art council do it, we're going to lose a piece of art that they're going to put somewhere else because
No. So my suggestion was specifically fee in lieu. So instead of they want to design something, instead of them providing something, they pay into a fund. It would not come out of the Arts Council. I just used that as an example, the bed tax as an example of how the funding would work. So I'm not proposing that anyone who says, I don't know how to do that, or I'm a deer in the headlights, gets off the hook scot-free and there's no charge for it. I'm not presenting that by any means.
That's great. I really think that's a wonderful idea, and I think that having a piece of artwork, a spectacular piece of artwork like was just mentioned, would be fabulous. And I think that is going to change the whole Sawmill Road to something that people don't want to even be on, to something that's really cool. And I think your idea is splendid, that you let somebody like the Art Council do it, as long as we make sure that it can get funded by the development, so correct. I think that's great. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussions? Thank you, everyone, for a very successful meeting. And we kind of ran the gamut tonight, but we're 1 minute shy of 10. So
just a quick reminder to wait until